Chapter 1301. There was no doubt that Luju's confidant had also been infiltrated. This Garuda must have been secretly destroyed by that confidant, and it was he who informed the enemy to intercept it. "Eldest princess, where are you going?" A mocking voice echoed between heaven and earth. A handsome male mermaid led a group of mermaids, forming a semicircle, completely blocking their way. "By you? Weren't you punished to face the wall? Who let you out?" Luju stared in surprise at the person who was mocking her. It was none other than Bai, whom Suyu had suggested to deprive of the control of the entrance. Bai's handsome face was full of sternness. "Luju, the entire mermaid tribe knows my feelings for you, but what have you done? You deprived me of my power and punished me to follow the sword will of an outsider. Am I not as important to you as an outsider?" Luju stared at him calmly and said, "You grew up with me, and the Mermaid Emperor even intended to marry me to you so that you could inherit the throne. How can I not have any feelings for you? How can an outsider compare to me?" Hearing this, Bai's face softened, and he smiled with relief. "Well, as long as you come here now, we can still be friends. It's too late. Before you brought your troops here, I did value you far more than this young master, but now—" Luju's eyes turned cold. "You are indeed disloyal to the mermaid tribe, as Master Su said, and you have defected to the two traitors. There was no one else who had the power to bypass her, the eldest princess, and release Bai without permission, except for the 3 tribal generals." Bai's smile froze, and his eyes gradually turned cold. "Luju, a wise man submits to circumstances. Let go of the Mermaid Emperor, and after I inherit the throne, I will marry you as the Mermaid Empress." "What if I say no?" Luju smiled bitterly, her eyes full of disappointment. Bai said coldly, "You can't escape. As early as when you and the 2 princesses went out to collect the endless spiritual pearls, the mermaid tribe was no longer the tribe you imagined. All your trusted subordinates, all the strong men of the tribe have surrendered to us, and those who did not are dead. The mermaid tribe had already launched a coup, and all power had fallen into the hands of the enemy. We will pack everything and wait for you to come back." "You should know what we want," Bai said coldly. The reason why they pretended to be calm and did not attack the Mermaid Emperor was because they did not want Luju to be vigilant. Unfortunately, everything was detected by Suyu. Now, they wanted to escape with Luju and the Mermaid Emperor, and the latter was even about to recover. Luju laughed coldly. "You want the Mermaid Blood Pearl and inherit the Mermaid Emperor? Ha ha, dream on." The strongest person in the mermaid tribe had always been the Mermaid Emperor. Before the Mermaid Emperor died, he would pass on his divine path. Whoever could inherit the Mermaid Emperor's divine path could become the strongest in the mermaid tribe and take charge of the royal power. It could be said that without inheriting the Mermaid Emperor's divine path, it was meaningless to control the mermaid tribe. Without sufficient strength, they would be overthrown sooner or later. "Green bead, on account of the fact that I still have feelings for you, give me the Mermaid Emperor's blood bead, or else." Bai's eyes gradually turned cold. The mermaid warriors around him were filled with murderous intent as they approached. Luju replied, "Unfortunately, the Mermaid Emperor's blood bead is no longer with me." "Where is it?" Bai's expression became tense, and he couldn't help but look at Suyu. "Did you hand it over to him?" "Ha ha!" Green bead stood at the bow of the Garuda and whispered, "Young master, I will break out of the encirclement. You can escape with the Mermaid Emperor." It was unrealistic to think that everyone could escape unscathed. However, Suyu didn't pay any attention to him. He took out a blood-stained ancient cloth from his sleeves and threw it into the air. The blood-stained cloth expanded in the wind and became 100 feet long, wrapping the entire Garuda, Suyu and Luju within it. Immediately afterward, a wave of water elemental energy gathered around Garuda, condensing into a stream of water that propelled Garuda forward. No one expected that the destroyed Garuda could still be controlled. Bai's eyes flashed. Stop them! More than a dozen mermaid warriors unleashed their magic treasures and divine abilities to attack the rapidly approaching Garuda. However, the blood-stained cloth wrapped around Garuda was extremely evil, and any attack that landed on it was easily deflected. Caught off guard, more than a dozen mermaid warriors were all knocked away by Garuda. What was even more evil was that after being knocked away, they all turned into blood and were absorbed by this mysterious layer of blood-stained cloth. The Nine Emperor Shroud, the great treasure left behind by the demonic god of six paths. Back then, even the dead soul worm was trapped for a moment. The blood on it was the corpse blood of the past emperors of the Xing River. It was extremely domineering, and ordinary strong men would die if they touched it. In the blink of an eye, a group of mermaid warriors died mysteriously. The other group of mermaid warriors who were about to intercept Garuda broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly dodged. Even Bai avoided it in horror, not daring to face it head-on. Watching Garuda fly to the exit, Bai's expression became anxious. Putting aside the Mermaid Emperor's blood bead, once the Mermaid Emperor was cured, who among them could survive? "Generals, please act quickly," Bai shouted. Boom! The heavens and the earth shook. Two beams of divine light penetrated the giant ship and suddenly descended on both sides of Garuda. The moment they appeared, the two of them struck out with their palms, trying to smash Garuda into pieces. However, the Nine Emperor Shroud flashed with a bloody light, and layers of distant and ancient majestic will erupted from it. Not only did the two deities fail to smash Garuda, but they were also shaken by the shroud, revealing the two deities themselves. They were a man and a woman, both middle-aged. The man was dressed in silver-white and looked powerful, while the woman was dressed in pink and enchanting. They were the two brave generals who refused to listen to Lu Zhu's orders. At this moment, they stared at the shroud in surprise. "This is the breath of the divine warriors of heaven and earth." The two were shocked. Inside the Garuda, Suyu was also surprised. The Nine Emperor Shroud was the shroud of the nine emperors who opened up the Xing River, and it was stained with their breath. Why did the two deities say that this breath was also the breath of the divine warriors of heaven and earth of the ancient god realm? Were they the same group of people? "Don't let them leave. Block the exit." The female general's expression changed slightly. She turned into a divine light and rushed to the exit one step ahead of Suyu. She put her palms together. Divine Path Incarnation. With a low growl, her divine path turned into a labyrinth and descended in front of the exit. The labyrinth was extremely confusing, making it impossible to identify the specific location of the exit. If one broke into the labyrinth, they would not be able to get out in a short time. Su Yu's eyes narrowed, and he drove the Garuda to crush it directly. Suddenly, the labyrinth, under the remnant of the Nine Emperor Shroud, was on the verge of collapse. At the same time, the female general's miserable groan could be heard. Her divine path had been severely damaged, and she was not feeling well either. "General Hu used the Sunluo cannon. This shroud is too powerful, I can't hold on for long," the female general urged. General Hu immediately took out a bronze cannon that was 10,000 feet long. It was simple and unadorned, somewhat similar to the giant cannon of the sacred sky warship, except that it was countless times smaller. Hearing this, Lu Zhu's face trembled. They really have mastered this kind of destructive weapon. That is a weapon that my mermaid tribe has successfully replicated, and its power is comparable to a full blow from the Mermaid Emperor. Although the labyrinth was on the verge of collapse, it could not be broken through in a short time. However, the Sunluo cannon had already been launched, and an extremely threatening energy was rapidly brewing in the Sunluo cannon. Suyu frowned. The Nine Emperor Shroud was not a defensive emperor-based saint artifact, and he was afraid that it would not be able to completely withstand this blow. Right at that moment, the female general who was blocking the exit suddenly roared in anger. "Hey you, how dare you!" Boom! With a loud noise, The labyrinth that the female general had transformed was shattered by an external force. In the midst of the screams, the female general revealed her true form. Her mouth was full of blood, and she stumbled back to the side of General Hu, glaring angrily at the figure behind the labyrinth. It was a strong man at the level of a deity, with a head full of long black hair, and the scales on his lower body were also dark. His facial features were feminine, and he was very handsome. Lu Zhu's eyes lit up. General Heiyu. Heiyu withdrew his fists, and his expression turned serious. Greetings, eldest princess, I am late to the rescue. Lu Zhu's eyes were filled with joy. Eldest princess, please leave with the Mermaid Emperor as soon as possible. I will block them first and come back later. General Heiyu said. Lu Zhu glanced at Suyu, meaning to say that he had guessed wrong. General Heiyu was loyal and devoted. Suyu was expressionless as he piloted the Garuda and flew over quickly. General Hu and the female general's faces changed drastically. They wanted to stop him, but General Heiyu appeared in front of them. Heiyu, you are courting death. The two generals were furious. Heiyu's face was indifferent. You two traitors, don't even think of harming a single hair on the eldest princess and the Mermaid Emperor. The next moment the two sides began to fight. At that moment, Lu Zhu had already taken out the key and opened the entrance. All mermaids, listen up, chase after them immediately, don't let them escape. Yes. Not only did Bai lead the team to chase after them, but two teams of the general's personal guards also emerged from the side. The strongest among them are at the level of a late-stage prospective deity. Bai calmed down a little, and his eyes revealed his murderous intent. Eldest princess, I gave you a chance to be the Mermaid Empress, but you didn't cherish it. Don't blame me for imprisoning you like a slave. Chase. A large number of mermaids surged out like a tide. The Garuda, driven by the water, immediately left the exit and arrived at the waters outside. Where is the nearest direction to leave the mermaid tribe? Suyu asked. Lu Zhu pointed into the distance. Southwest, that is the border between the mermaid tribe and the Yiksha tribe. Northwest is the border with the Frogman tribe, both directions are about the same. Suyu nodded, and the Garuda turned into a residual shadow as it sped towards the Yiksha tribe. Lu Zhu was stunned. Why the Yiksha tribe? There is a great hatred between our two tribes. If we escape to the tribe's waters, it will easily alarm the Yiksha king. Suyu glanced at the Mermaid Emperor and said lightly, that's why it's safer. The Mermaid tribe might chase into the Frogman tribe, but they wouldn't chase into the Yiksha tribe. The most dangerous place was the safest place. Swoosh. As soon as they left, Bai and the two late-stage prospective deities chased after them. However, as soon as they left, outside the sacred sky warship, a group of mermaids suddenly appeared in ambush. They were left behind by General Heiyu. Bai and the others were caught off guard and were instantly scattered. Chapter 1302. He was the captain of General Blackfish's bodyguards and his confidant. With such cover and the ambush, Suyu and the others managed to escape. 2 hours later, the Garuda stopped above a dark ruin. Looking into the distance, one could clearly see a mountain range that stretched for countless li at the bottom of the water. It was pitch black, like a black dragon. That is the mysterious Crystal Mountain Range, the boundary between the Mermaid tribe and the Yiksha tribe, Lu Zhu said. Suyu put away the Nine Emperor shroud and nodded slightly. Let's keep going. Wait, are you going to enter the Yiksha tribe's territory? The scar-faced mermaid who was covering them asked in surprise. Lu Zhu cast a trusting look at Suyu. Yes, General Blackfish's power can only hold them off for a while. We plan to sneak into the Yiksha tribe's waters. In this way they won't dare to pursue us. The scar-faced mermaid thought about it and agreed. You are right, eldest princess. General Hu and General Carp suddenly rebelled. General Blackfish was caught off guard and suffered heavy losses. He could only retreat to a certain place on the Sacred Sky warship with his remaining soldiers. When he heard that eldest princess had returned, General Blackfish suddenly attacked. Fortunately, he was in time and did not injure eldest princess. Luju was deeply moved. I will remember General Blackfish's kindness to the royal family. When my father wakes up, I will definitely ask him to reward me generously. I just don't know how General Blackfish is now and where he is. Eldest princess, there is no need to worry. Although General Blackfish is no match for the two rebels, it is still very easy for him to leave. As he spoke, the scar-faced mermaid took out a small bag. This is something General Blackfish prepared for eldest princess. It will allow you to use it peacefully for 100 years. Luju looked ashamed. She had been persuaded by Su Yu and almost misunderstood General Blackfish's loyalty. Thank you, General Blackfish. Luju took it and said nothing. The scar-faced mermaid smiled lightly. Eldest princess, there is no need to be like this. General Blackfish is loyal to the royal family. Even if he dies, he will die without regrets. Eldest princess, please take a look at the Cosmos sack and see if there is anything missing. If there is, I can make it up to you. There is no need. The eldest princess felt even more apologetic. She symbolically opened the Cosmos sack and glanced at it. However, there was a sudden change. The moment the bag was opened, a pink mist sprayed out from it. Green Bead was caught off guard and was hit by the spray. She felt her whole body go limp, and the mortal fairy's strength in her body became stagnant. Even though she reacted quickly and threw the Qiankuan pouch out, she was still hit. Standing up with great difficulty, Luju raised her head to look at the scarred mermaid. She wanted to ask why, but the scarred mermaid, who had been loyal just a moment ago, now had a cold sneer in his eyes. Together with his scarred face, he looked even more ferocious. What a naive and adorable princess. No wonder General Blackfish said that he could play you two princesses in the palm of his hand with a little trick. Even someone like me can gain your trust with just a few words, let alone General Blackfish. Green Bead was shocked. She could not believe her ears. General Blackfish asked you to do this? Of course. The scar-faced merman's lips curled into a mocking smile. Green Bead's heart was bleeding, and the pain of being deceived filled her heart. It turned out that all of Su Yu's guesses were true. Just a moment ago, she was still feeling guilty for suspecting General Blackfish. But the truth slapped her hard in the face. He saved me on purpose? Green Bead's face was calm, and a faint silver light flickered in her sleeves. The scar-faced merman nodded. That's right. Only by saving you and the Mermaid Emperor can General Blackfish be qualified to attract the people of the mermaid tribe. Now, everyone knows that General Hu and General Carp are hunting down the royal family, and General Blackfish saved them. Let me ask you, if General Blackfish makes a public appeal, who will the mermaid tribe support? Greenbeard said coldly, Is General Blackfish trying to use my father and me as puppets? That's right. This is the only way he can control the mermaid tribe. The scar-faced merman laughed mockingly and walked towards Greenbeard. Greenbeard looked calm. I am willing to cooperate with General Blackfish and become a puppet, but please let my father go. No. The Mermaid Emperor must die. Greenbeard was shocked. She gritted her teeth and said, Then if he remains unconscious, can you spare his life? No. The scar-faced merman had a cold look on his face. The Mermaid Emperor is too big a threat. He must die. Don't push me too far. Greenbeard swished, and a shiny silver blade fell from her sleeves. The scar-faced merman sneered. You want to deal with me? Ridiculous. Wait, what are you doing? The blade in Greenbeard's hand was not aimed at the scar-faced merman, but at her own chest. Her face was full of determination. Don't you want a puppet? If I die, where are you going to find a puppet? The smile on the scar-faced merman's face disappeared, and he stared coldly at Greenbeard. Let them go, or else you can forget about getting anything, Greenbeard shouted. But suddenly, Greenbeard's body went limp. It was the effect of the drug. Her palm loosened, and the blade deviated from her chest. At this moment, the scar-faced merman's eyes flashed, and he whipped his giant tail. The blow, which was imbued with divine power, sent green bead flying, and she spat out blood. The blade in her hand was also easily knocked away. Then, a fist landed hard on her abdomen, shattering her internal organs. She fell to the ground, seriously injured, and lost the ability to move. The scar-faced merman retracted his fist, and his eyes were full of contempt. "You don't know what's good for you." Then, his cold eyes flashed, and he looked at Su Yu and the unconscious mermaid emperor with a sinister smile. His eyes ignored Su Yu and fell on the mermaid emperor. "Haha, I didn't expect that there would come a day when I would kill the mermaid emperor with my own hands. It's a pity that someone like the mermaid emperor is going to die in the hands of a nobody like me." Swish, the scar-faced merman's figure flashed, and he flew over. His palm, which was imbued with divine power, went straight for the celestial spirit in the mermaid emperor's abdomen. However, just as the palm was about to land, a palm reached out and blocked it. The scar-faced merman glanced at Su Yu from the corner of his eye, and his nostrils flared. Instead of retreating, he moved forward, intending to destroy Su Yu's palm. The two palms collided, and Su Yu's palm retracted. The scar-faced merman was sneering when his face suddenly froze. There was a mass of black mist in his palm, exuding a shocking breath of death. Then, the breath of death crawled up his arm and covered his whole body in an instant. Black powder gradually peeled off from the surface of his body, and his whole body was turning into flying ash. "You!" The scar-faced merman couldn't believe that Su Yu's palm contained such a terrifying power of death. Poof! A palm penetrated his abdomen and grabbed a mass of celestial spirit. "Good stuff, don't waste it," Su Yu said lightly, and put away the celestial spirit without any expression. The scar-faced merman's eyes darkened, and his whole body completely turned into black powder. Lu Zhu, who had fallen to the ground with serious injuries, was extremely shocked. A late-stage prospective deity was killed with a single palm. What kind of strength was he? Su Yu walked over, and a touch of life force surged from his fingertips. He touched it between her eyebrows, and her injuries healed quickly. At the same time, his right palm extracted the toxins from her body. "Although in my opinion, you are hopelessly stupid, there is still something worth saving," Su Yu said lightly. Sacrificing herself twice to help her father was not something an ordinary woman could do. Lu Zhu's face was flushed. Su Yu's praise sounded deeply sarcastic to her. Su Yu had warned her that General Blackfish was not reliable, but she still fell for it. In fact, from the perspective of a normal person, she was not stupid. However, from Su Yu's point of view, Lu Zhu had to admit that she was really stupid. "I hope that after suffering a little, you will improve." Su Yu retracted his hand and said indifferently. He could have stopped this simple-minded princess from opening the cosmos sack, but he did nothing to stop her. It was precisely to teach her a lesson. Lu Zhu got up. She had a beautiful face, but she looked embarrassed in front of Su Yu. She lowered her head and said, "I know, I will listen to you in the future." "There is no future. Save the Mermaid Emperor, get the information I want, and we will go our separate ways," Su Yu said lightly. He jumped onto the Garuda and continued to drive towards the celestial crystal mountains. Lu Zhu smiled bitterly. He was as cold as ever. However, a sly look flashed in Lu Zhu's eyes. She raised her chin proudly and said to herself, "Going our separate ways is not something you can do just because you want to." An hour later, they arrived at the mysterious Crystal Mountain Range, and Su Yu retracted his palm. "The poison in the Mermaid Emperor's body has been cleansed, and he should wake up soon." Su Yu put the Mermaid Emperor down. Lu Zhu breathed a sigh of relief. The awakening of the Mermaid Emperor was a foregone conclusion. The chaotic situation of the mermaid tribe could finally come to an end. Now, all he had to do was wait for the Mermaid Emperor to wake up, and Su Yu would leave after getting the information he wanted. Thinking of this, Su Yu took out the bright red bead given to him by Lu Zhu and said, "Is this the legacy of the Mermaid Emperor, the Mermaid Emperor's blood bead?" Green bead nodded. "Yes, getting it is equivalent to accepting the inheritance of the Mermaid Emperor. If the Mermaid Emperor wakes up and sees this bead, even if he wants to break the contract, he will have to consider your identity as the heir." "Is that so?" Su Yu was deep in thought. Su Yu had already cultivated to the mortal fairy stage 4. It was time to prepare to break through to the prospective deity stage. It was different from the previous realms, where one only needed to have enough power. To break through to prospective deity, one had to achieve perfection on the divine path. Any prospective deity had comprehended a certain divine path to the extreme before becoming a deity. Su Yu's divine path was defiance, but the strange thing was that Su Yu already had 2 celestial origins before he had even condensed his divine path. Under such circumstances, how could he break through to the prospective deity stage? There was no one's cultivation experience to refer to. Therefore, Su Yu could only refer to the divine path of the deities and find his own way to become a deity from their divine paths. With a shift of thought, Su Yu comprehended the divine path in the Mermaid Emperor's blood bead. As soon as he comprehended, Su Yu frowned, opened his eyes abruptly, and asked, "Green bead, has the divine path of the Mermaid Emperor always been the thunder path?" Green bead blinked her beautiful aquamarine eyes. "Yes, the mermaid is good at controlling the divine path of the water attribute. The Mermaid Emperor of the past generations has always been a type of thunder, water thunder." "How is that possible?" Su Yu suddenly looked at the body of the Mermaid Emperor behind him, and his pupils flickered violently. However, to Su Yu's surprise, the body of the Mermaid Emperor had disappeared. "Oh no, I think we may have made a mistake." Su Yu suddenly got up, staring at death, and his face instantly became solemn. Green bead also stared at the missing body of the Mermaid Emperor with a stiff expression, with a blank look on her face. At that moment, a long sigh resounded in their ears like thunder. Chapter 1303. A figure with pale golden eyes with his hands behind his back stood leisurely 100 feet away from them. His aura did not leak out in the slightest, and he hid his aura extremely well. If he had not shown up voluntarily, Su Yu might not have been able to detect his presence. Who else could that figure be but the Mermaid Emperor? His body was no longer rotten, and his whole body exuded a bright luster. The only difference was that the pair of royal eyes that were supposed to be turquoise were pale golden. "You are not my father, who are you?" Lu Zhu's chest rose and fell, showing her inner turmoil. No one knew her father better than she did. The Mermaid Emperor in front of her might be her father, but his soul was definitely not. "Oh, my dear daughter, it was you and the 3 generals who dug me out of the deep pit of the spirit vein. Who do you think I am?" The Mermaid Emperor smiled leisurely. Lu Zhu was extremely anxious. "Who are you? When did you occupy my father's body?" She was excited and trembling all over. She could not believe that her father, whom she had painstakingly rescued, was actually another creature. At that time, the Mermaid Emperor and the Yaksha King were fighting. Both sides were so powerful that ordinary deities and strong men did not dare to approach them. When the battle was over, they found the dying body of their father in a deep pit in the spirit vein. How could they have expected that it was at that time that their father's body was occupied? What was even more ridiculous was that they had gone through all the hardships and risked their lives to go to the endless origin to find the endless spiritual pearl, just to save him. Just now, they were trying to escape at all costs to protect him from the traitors. But the result was so cruel. Su Yu sighed sympathetically. Princess Lu Zhu was indeed unlucky and pitiful. "Don't ask, it is a god-level tomb guard spirit. Like your sister, it was secretly occupied." Su Yu looked at her and said calmly. Lu Zhu was shocked. "God-level tomb guard spirit? Your father is not dead, just controlled, just like my sister?" Su Yu shook his head slightly. I'm afraid not. The reason it deceived me was that it replaced your father's soul. That's why I mistakenly thought it was the soul of the Mermaid Emperor. I didn't expect that even I would be fooled and restore his body for nothing. I realize that you are really smart. The Mermaid Emperor revealed a look of admiration. You have a bit of the demeanor of my master when he was alive. To be honest, if you didn't know too much, I really wouldn't want to kill you. Green Bead gradually recovered from the cruel blow and said hatefully, What do we know about you that you need to be so ruthless? Putting everything else aside, it was Su Yu who saved you. Of course you don't know anything, but he does. The Mermaid Emperor narrowed his eyes and stared at Su Yu with a faint smile. Is that right, smart man? Su Yu stared at him and said, I initially thought that the deity-level tomb guard spirit attached to the little princess was secretly arranged by the 3 traitorous generals. Now that I think about it, I have overestimated the 3 traitorous generals. The real mastermind is you, isn't it? That god-rank tomb guardian spirit is one of your avatars, right? You originally planned to abandon the divine body of the Mermaid Emperor and occupy the body of the little princess, but unfortunately, I accidentally ruined it. As for the 10,000 tomb guard spirits that chased after the 2 princesses along the way, they were actually helpers that you summoned when you manipulated the little princess to go out. They were ready to help you seize the power of the mermaid tribe at any time. Am I right? Clap, clap. The Mermaid Emperor applauded, his face full of deep approval. Very perfect. In fact, my consciousness has been awake all this time, and I have been observing your every word and action. It is really hard to believe that you have amazing wisdom like my master. The next moment, the Mermaid Emperor's smile faded, and a cold light suddenly shrouded him. So, do you think you should be killed? If he were alive, his fake identity as the Mermaid Emperor would be exposed. At that time, it would be extremely difficult to unify the mermaid tribe. From your point of view, of course I should be killed, but that is only if I am willing to be killed by you. Su Yu growled, and the 5 Elements Mountain suddenly appeared in front of him. Almost at the moment when it was cast out, something invisible and subtle hit the 5 Elements Mountain, making a crisp tinkling sound. Upon closer inspection, it was 2 transparent tentacles that were invisible to the naked eye, like strands of hair. If Su Yu had not been vigilant, Su Yu and Green Bead would have been plotted against. You are very vigilant. The Mermaid Emperor hooked his finger, and the 2 tentacles retracted. His pale golden eyes stared at Su Yu playfully, and as he approached he said, I am actually very curious, where did you get so much of the scent of my people from your body, and where did the smell of blood come from? He seemed to be asking a question, but in fact, he was trying to distract Su Yu. After taking 10 steps, he suddenly attacked. His pale golden eyes shot out a golden flame that bypassed the 5 Elements Mountain and swallowed the 2. However, Su Yu was already prepared. The power of the 5 elements surrounding the 5 Elements Mountain changed rapidly, all of which were transformed into the water attribute. Then, the power of the water attribute gave birth to the power of ice, forming an ice dragon that opened its mouth and swallowed the golden flame that filled the sky. The pure power of the 5 elements is almost condensed into the 5 elements divine path. The Mermaid Emperor narrowed his eyes, then shook his head. Unfortunately, in front of the gods, it is just a small trick. Bang! The ice dragon suddenly shattered, and it was burned from the inside out by the golden flame. The flame was no longer hindered, and it swallowed Su Yu and Green Bead in one gulp. 9 Emperor Shroud. Su Yu opened his 5 fingers, and the shroud expanded infinitely, turning into a giant curtain that wrapped around the golden flame. As the shroud continued to shrink, the golden flame gradually extinguished, and eventually turned into flying ashes. Su Yu waved his hands, each grabbing the 5 Elements Mountain and the shroud back. At the same time, a rich water attribute power gathered around him. It's almost time, water escape. Suyu grabbed Green Bead and decisively chose to escape. The Mermaid Emperor smiled faintly. Do you think you can escape from my palm? However, just as he was about to give chase, he suddenly frowned and looked behind him. He saw 3 masses of divine light galloping over, 1 in front and 2 behind. The former was General Blackfish, whose face was sullen. As soon as the scar-faced mermaid died, he realized that something was wrong and immediately got rid of the entanglement to investigate the situation. General Hu and General Li could not sit back and watch the Mermaid Emperor recover. Unexpectedly, the 3 of them rushed here one after another, only to find that the person waiting for them was the Mermaid Emperor. He had really recovered. The Mermaid Emperor glanced in Su Yu's direction and murmured, "So that's how it is. He really calculated it perfectly." Su Yu did not want to fight him head-on. He had calculated that as soon as the scar-faced mermaid died, General Blackfish would definitely chase after him. Therefore, he pretended to resist for a while and immediately retreated, letting General Blackfish and the other 2 generals who were chasing after him hold him back. This exquisite calculation ability made the Mermaid Emperor's eyes flicker coldly, and he felt that it was extremely dangerous. Swish! The 3 generals rushed over and stared at the Mermaid Emperor in front of them. General Blackfish slowly retreated and said to General Hu and General Li, "It seems that now is not the time for us to fight among ourselves. The Mermaid Emperor has just recovered from a serious illness, and his strength is not at its peak. If we join forces, we still have a glimmer of hope to kill him." General Hu and General Li looked at each other and nodded in agreement after weighing the pros and cons. "Mermaid Emperor, don't blame us for being cruel. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for coming back to life." The 3 generals joined forces to attack, and each of their moves was their strongest trump card. In response, the Mermaid Emperor smiled contemptuously and took a step forward. The pale golden flames around his body soared. 3 tragic howls rang out. After one exchange, the 3 generals were burned by the golden flames, and they screamed in pain. "You are not the Mermaid Emperor, who are you?" General Blackfish roared. General Hu and General Li also hurriedly extinguished the flames on their bodies, with a look of horror in their eyes. The Mermaid Emperor in front of them not only did not weaken, but was more than several times stronger than when he was at his peak. They also finally realized that the Mermaid Emperor in front of them was another existence. The Mermaid Emperor stared at them contemptuously with his hands behind his back. "You don't deserve to know who I am. If you want to die, I can grant your wish now. If you want to live, make an oath to this thing and follow me." The Mermaid Emperor threw over 3 soapy green jade tokens engraved with ancient runes. The jade tokens were densely covered with the vicissitudes of time, and there was still a hint of the great will of heaven and earth. The Emperor's Oath Token? Who are you? Where did you get the Oath Token inscribed by the Divine Emperor of Heaven and Earth? General Blackfish was shocked. The Oath Token was carved by the Divine Emperor of Heaven and Earth in the era of the ancient god realm, and it was filled with the great will of the Divine Emperor. Once an oath was made to this thing, if the oath was violated, one would suffer the backlash of the great will. Since ancient times, those who made an oath had never escaped the misfortune of the backlash. This thing had long disappeared without a trace with the death of the Divine Emperor of Heaven and Earth. Who was the person who occupied the body of the Mermaid Emperor? Don't talk nonsense, make an oath, or die. The Mermaid Emperor exuded a strong aura. The 3 generals hesitated for a while, their eyes full of bitterness. They were already in awe of the Mermaid Emperor when he was at his peak, not to mention a more mysterious and powerful existence. The 3 of them looked at each other, dripped their blood essence, and swore on the spot that they would be loyal to the Mermaid Emperor in front of them. Only then did the Mermaid Emperor show a faint smile and take back the 3 jade tokens. "Very well, you can work for me with peace of mind, and I will not treat you badly. At least, it is far from what a small mermaid tribe can give you." The Mermaid Emperor's tone was very relaxed, and he did not seem to be boasting. Yes, Lord Mermaid Emperor. Mermaid Emperor. Well, I had no choice but to find this weak divine body as a refuge. Then I will be the Mermaid Emperor for once. The Mermaid Emperor smiled. I have 2 orders for you. First, reorganize the mermaid tribe. I plan to unify this area within half a year. The Frogman tribe, the Yiksha tribe, the Water Snake tribe. These weak tribes do not need to exist. Hearing this, the 3 generals gasped. Who on earth was this person? How arrogant! The Empire of Darkness had existed for hundreds of millions of years. The 99 tribes of the southern region were independent of each other and intertwined with each other. Even the ruler of the Empire of Darkness, the royal family of the Empire of Darkness, did not dare to wipe out a tribe. Second, go and capture Su Yu and Luzhu. Especially don't let them escape into the spirit vein. There is my master's tomb there. Master? The 3 generals were secretly shocked. If he was so powerful, what kind of person was his master? After giving the order, the 3 gods immediately chased in the direction where Su Yu escaped. Su Yu drove the Garuda into the mysterious Crystal Mountains. This mountain was abnormally rich in spiritual energy. Liquefied spiritual liquid could be seen everywhere, scattered among the mountains, and no one picked it up. Many rare treasures of heaven and earth were scattered everywhere, and no one picked it up. What a strange spirit vein! Su Yu was secretly surprised. He had seen many blessed lands of heaven and earth, but this was the first time he had seen one with such rich spiritual energy. Generally speaking, the spiritual energy of the spirit vein was either diluted in all directions or absorbed by the spiritual creatures growing in the spirit vein. Liquefaction was rare. Only in this place, not only did the spiritual energy not dilute, but it became denser and denser. This is the spirit vein that our mermaid tribe and the Yiksha tribe are fighting for. It is also a rare spirit vein in the southern region of the Empire of Darkness. Su Yu observed it for a long time and shook his head slightly. It is not rare, but this spirit vein is strange. If I am not mistaken, there must be something unusual under the spirit vein. Take me to the place where you found the Mermaid Emperor. Su Yu's eyes flashed. Luzhu was stunned. Why are we going there? Of course, to answer my question. What is hidden under this spirit vein? Su Yu did not forget that the god-level tomb guard spirit that occupied the Mermaid Emperor once said that its master was here. Since it had occupied the divine body of the Mermaid Emperor in that deep pit, it would start the investigation from there. Luzhu's face was gloomy. So what if we find out? Father can't be resurrected. Don't you want to avenge him? Su Yu said lightly. Yes. Luzhu's eyes burst with coldness. Okay, I will take you there. The deep pit was located in the middle of the spirit vein. Back then, the 2 tribes negotiated an alliance here, but they were plotted against by the Yiksha king. While leading the way, Luzhu said with a complicated expression, How do you know that he is not my father? Su Yu said, I am very familiar with the poison that your father was poisoned with. He was in the place where I used to stay. It is called the demonic god poison. This poison contains the breath of the demon race and is most afraid of masculine things. The divine path of the previous mermaid emperors is thunder. Logically speaking, it is impossible to be haunted by this kind of poison. The only explanation is that the one who was poisoned is not your father. I see. Luzhu's eyes dimmed even more. Now that she thought about it, when her father was thrown into the deep pit, he was probably dead and his body was occupied by the god-level tomb guard spirit. Soon, they came to a place full of devastation. There were remnants of the destruction after the battle everywhere, especially the deep pit in the middle, which almost pierced through the spirit vein. The bottom of the deep pit was murky, and dust was still echoing in the air. The divine power of the battle that day had not completely dissipated. Was this it? Su Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked down with his transparent eyes, looking through the dust bit by bit. When he reached the bottom, Su Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, and he nodded slowly. There is something wrong with this deep pit. There is a crack at the bottom that leads to an unknown place. Crack? Why didn't we find it that day? Luzhu was surprised. Su Yu pointed to the remaining divine power and said, "You must have been disturbed by the divine power, and the crack at that time should not be as big as it is now." As he spoke, Su Yu swooped down and went straight through the dust. "What are you doing? It is full of divine power. Mortal fairies like us will most likely die if we enter it." Chapter 1304. A celestial energy sphere rotated in Su Yu's abdomen, releasing pure divine power and wrapping the two of them in it. Divine power? You are a god? Luzhu was shocked. She never expected Su Yu to be a god. However, after calming down a little, everything that happened to Su Yu could be explained. As they spoke, they fell into the deep pit filled with the divine power storm. Puff! Just as they were about to enter, the remnant divine power attacked them from all directions, trying to crush them into pieces. Fortunately, they were protected by Su Yu's divine power, which repelled the residual divine power. Just as they fell into it, the three gods led by General Blackfish flashed over and saw the three of them fall into it. It's full of divine power down there. How dare they break in without the protection of divine power? General Blackfish was slightly surprised. General Hu and General Li secretly breathed a sigh of relief. We can go back and report. The existence of non-gods has no chance of survival after falling in. Even if he has that shroud, he can't stop the penetration of divine power, General Hu said. General Blackfish stared at the deep pit for a long time and slowly nodded, agreeing with General Hu's judgment. The shroud may be able to block the attacks of the gods, but it was impossible to survive such a pervasive vortex of divine power without the protection of divine power. However, there was a lingering doubt in General Blackfish's mind. Why did they do this? With doubts in mind, the three returned to the mermaid tribe and reported to the mermaid emperor. The mermaid emperor narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly. "Haha, interesting. He actually saw some clues and wanted to find out where I came from?" Others might not know about Su Yu, but how could the mermaid emperor not? His cleverness was witnessed by the mermaid emperor. Of course, he did not believe that Su Yu would break into such a dangerous place for no reason. "General Hu, go back to the edge of the deep pit and guard it. He will come out in less than 10 days. Hearing this, the three generals were shocked. Su Yu was not dead? I don't have much energy to deal with him, I'll leave it to you. The mermaid emperor said coldly. Pass my order, all the warriors of the mermaid tribe gather. Whoosh! Su Yu only heard the sound of the wind in his ears, and the beating of the residual divine power. He and Luzhu passed through the vortex and fell to the bottom of the deep pit. There, a crack as thick as a human was clearly visible. Enter! Su Yu shouted in a low voice, and instantly disappeared into the crevice. It was pitch black in front of him, and he couldn't see the light of day. However, he could faintly sense the auras of many tomb guard spirits. Luzhu's vision was pitch black, but Su Yu's eyes could see everything clearly. The crack was filled with pitch black, child-sized eggs. Through the transparent walls of the egg, one could see the unhatched graveguard spirits sleeping inside. They were of all shapes and sizes, each with their own unique characteristics. Hiss! Even Su Yu felt his scalp go numb. There wasn't just one black egg, but countless of them. They were densely packed, hanging on the stone walls of the crevice. There are so many tomb guard spirits. It seems like my guess was right, Su Yu murmured. There is indeed an ancient tomb of a divine warrior of heaven and earth here. What? Luzhu was shocked. Su Yu's words were like a sudden clap of thunder that shook her to the core. The ancient tombs of the divine warriors of heaven and earth were all closely guarded by the imperial sacred faction. It was a well-known fact that there were only 9 ancient tombs of the divine warriors of heaven and earth left in the world. How could she believe that Su Yu said that there was an ancient tomb suppressed under the spirit vein in the mermaid tribe? Su Yu was not surprised and said calmly, "Didn't you say that the tomb guard spirits were born in the ancient tomb of the divine warriors of heaven and earth? The tomb guard spirits that occupied the mermaid emperor came from here, and there are hundreds of millions of huge tomb guard spirits here. If this is not the ancient tomb of the divine warriors of heaven and earth, then where is it?" Luju was shocked, and a bitter smile appeared in her heart. Perhaps the mermaid tribe and the Yiksha tribe did not expect that the spirit vein they were fighting for was actually the ancient tomb of the divine warriors of heaven and earth. If the royal family of the Empire of Darkness knew about it, not only would the spirit vein be confiscated, but the two tribes would also be razed to the ground. "Let's go in and have a look," Su Yu said, and walked along the underground crack. Along the way there were endless black eggs. Once all of them hatched, such a large number of tomb guard spirits in the galaxy would definitely be a disaster that would destroy 100 worlds, and there would be very few survivors. At the same time, Su Yu also keenly noticed that there were many traces of battle along the way, including the tomb guard spirit that occupied the breath of the mermaid emperor, and an extremely terrifying existence. When he stopped in front of a deep pit with a circumference of 10 feet, Su Yu squatted down, his eyes full of solemnity. In the deep pit, faint gray flames remained, burning quietly. Those gray flames were unknown, but they gave off an extremely dangerous feeling. Even standing on the edge of the deep pit, Su Yu had a very uneasy feeling. What is this thing? It seems very scary." Luju trembled slightly, feeling extremely uneasy. Su Yu said in a serious voice, "I don't know what it is, but I know that if the mermaid emperor touches this thing, he will definitely die." There was no doubt that there was an extremely terrifying existence in the depths of the ancient tomb. After hesitating for a while, Su Yu bypassed the deep pit and continued to move forward. "Sir, the ancient tomb of the divine warriors of heaven and earth has always been an existence that only the imperial sacred faction is qualified to touch. Even when they explore the ancient tomb, they often suffer heavy casualties before they can excavate a part of it. Let's go back, there is no need to go forward." Su Yu turned back, his eyes calm, as if he had been through the vicissitudes of time. He said, "I have people I need to protect, and for them, I can do anything. Since this ancient tomb is the tomb of the divine warriors of heaven and earth, it must be buried with many civilizations of the ancient era. Only with them can I go back to save them." After saying that, Su Yu walked firmly into the depths of the crack. Luju sighed slightly. He still had people he needed to protect, but who else did she have? Apart from her younger sister who was trapped in the mermaid tribe, who else in the world was worthy of her risking her life like Su Yu? The mermaid emperor? He had already perished from the world. The mermaid tribe? Would they still recognize her as a princess? Sighing softly, Luju followed Su Yu. It seemed that she had no other way but to follow this man. This walk took a full 5 days. It was as if they had walked through the entire spirit vein, and it was extremely long. Until the depths of the crack, a closed stone door stretched across the end. The stone door was 10,000 feet high, and the material was extremely hard. It had existed in the dark bottom of the water for hundreds of millions of years, but there was no sign of corrosion. What was even more bizarre was that the stone door was not an ordinary door, but a round door in the shape of a Tai Chi. On the stone walls on both sides of the Tai Chi stone door, thousands of blood symbols were inscribed. Each blood symbol contained an unusually powerful breath. That breath did not belong to the gods, but was similar to the breath of the royal family of the demon world. Staring at the blood symbols, Su Yu felt pain in his eyes, and the divine power in his body was tumbling, faintly feeling out of control. "This is the blood of the divine warriors of heaven and earth?" Luju was surprised. Su Yu's eyes narrowed. "You mean, these 10,000 blood symbols were written by the blood of the divine warriors of heaven and earth?" Luju nodded. "Yes, when I went to the Empire with my father to pay tribute, I saw the Emperor of the Empire display a word left by their ancestors from afar. That word was written with the blood of the divine warriors of heaven and earth, so I am sure that these symbols must be the blood of the divine warriors of heaven and earth, but it seems that it is not just the blood of one divine warrior of heaven and earth. Su Yu's heart was heavy. 10,000 symbols are suppressing. Is it really the divine warriors of heaven and earth buried in this ancient tomb? What kind of divine warrior of heaven and earth needed to be suppressed by the blood of other divine warriors of heaven and earth? After pondering for a long time, Su Yu activated his transparent eye and looked through the Tai Chi stone door. However, as soon as his eyes touched it, the 10,000 blood symbols flickered together, and a strong force blocked Su Yu's gaze. Can't see through it? Su Yu stared. Young master, look over there, there is a stone tablet. At the moment when the blood symbols flickered, Luzhu suddenly caught a glimpse of a dark stone tablet standing in the corner at the end of the passage. At first, she thought it was some kind of monster, which startled Luzhu. After taking a closer look, she found that it was an ancient stone tablet. Su Yu flashed over and stood in front of the stone tablet. Young master, these inscriptions are so strange, I don't recognize any of them, Luzhu said in surprise. There were 99 tribes in the southern region of the empire, each with a different language. In order to communicate, the princess of the mermaid tribe learned the languages of each tribe from an early age. Within the entire empire, there should be no language that she didn't recognize. However, the words in front of her were very strange. They seemed simple, but seemed to contain the truth of heaven and earth, and she couldn't understand them. She didn't notice that Su Yu's eyes were shaking and flickering, showing that his heart was extremely disturbed. After a long time, Su Yu took a deep breath and said, "Of course you don't recognize them. In this world, there are definitely only a few people who can recognize them, because these words come from the Book of First Heavens." The Book of First Heavens was the last thing that Yun Yazi gave to Su Yu. It was a wonderful book full of the mysteries of the universe and the truth of the world. If one could comprehend it thoroughly, one could master the 8 supreme profound meanings of the world. Unfortunately, Su Yu had only comprehended part of it and had no time to comprehend it. Now, he found part of the Book of First Heavens on an ancient stone tablet. Su Yu happened to recognize the content. The original meaning of the ancient stone tablet was, "In the past, when the sinful lady was born, the great path collapsed, and all the emperors were slaughtered. The emperors burned their royal blood, skinned their divine flesh, extracted their souls, and cast the 9 emperors' stone tablet to suppress the sinful lady here. However, the sinful lady was born in response to the heavens, and was born with the great path of heaven and earth. The 9 emperors' stone tablet can suppress her for hundreds of millions of years, but it can't suppress her forever. If one day the ancient tomb is broken, the future generations who are proficient in the inscriptions must leave with this tablet and lead the creatures of the god realm to escape. The sinful lady was born, and the great path was destroyed. Future generations, take care." It was a short line of words, but Su Yu spent half an hour to slowly decipher it. However, the content of the interpretation shocked Su Yu. Who was the sinful lady? In the past, the 9 emperors of the galaxy used their own flesh and soul to cast this tablet at all costs? How strong was she? Could the destruction of the ancient god realm be related to this sinful lady? Chapter 1305. Sinful girl. Su Yu stared at the Tai Chi diagram, staring at the 10,000 blood symbols, and suddenly felt a chill. In the ancient god realm, such a great evil creature of heaven and earth was suppressed. Born in response to the heavens, born with the great way of heaven and earth, even the 9 emperors could not suppress it forever. Now, everything was as the inscription of the 9 emperors said. After hundreds of millions of years, the sinful girl could not be suppressed, and the ancient tomb was broken. It can't be such a coincidence that I came to the ancient god realm just in time to see the birth of the sinful girl? Su Yu thought. He somewhat believed the purple-eyed demonic god's evaluation of him, the source of chaos. Everywhere he went there was no chaos. Messing with the enemy, absorbing luck, strengthening himself and the people around him. However, at this moment, Suyu could not laugh. The turmoil involved this time was too shocking. It involved the secret of the destruction of the ancient god realm billions of years ago, and involved the fall of the 9 divine warriors of heaven and earth. The former divine warriors of heaven and earth of the Xing River were destroyed overnight. The tens of millions of cavern worlds that densely covered the Xing River were destroyed, leaving only the eastern and western alliances. All of this, perhaps, could be answered. Suyu reread the inscription and stared at it deeply. The inscription said that if one could read the heavenly book, he could leave with this tablet and lead the creatures of the ancient god realm to escape. However, where could he escape to? Walking to the front of the inscription, Suyu touched the stone tablet. Immediately, 9 remnant thoughts of the emperors emerged from the tablet, sharply sweeping through Suyu's soul. The words of the heavenly book that Suyu knew in his life involuntarily emerged in his mind. Then, the 9 thoughts receded, and the stone tablet trembled, causing the entire underground crack to tremble. The tomb guard eggs were constantly falling off. Is the stone tablet going to recognize me as its master? Suyu was surprised. 9 divine warriors of heaven and earth, the steels forged with their blood, flesh, and souls would definitely be able to shock all living beings, even the great Tao of heaven. Getting this thing was no less than getting the inheritance of the ancient civilization. The stone tablet slowly left the earth, leaving a deep pit. To Suyu's surprise, there was something in the deep pit. Looking closely, it was a strange wing, only the size of a palm. The left wing was white and the right wing was black. The wings emitted black and white light, intertwining in the air to form a Tai Chi pattern. It was exactly the same as the Taiji stone gate. Green beads stared at the wings for a long time, and she seemed to be thinking about something. After that, she was shocked and said, Could this be the yin-yang Tai Chi wings of the Grand Qing Emperor? Suyu's pupils dilated. How could the weapon of an emperor be an ordinary item? Without thinking about it, Suyu sucked the yin-yang Tai Chi wings into his palm. The moment he touched it, the pair of wings disappeared into Suyu's body. Suyu was shocked. He immediately looked inside and found that the yin-yang Tai Chi wings were in his abdomen, between the 2 grains of celestial energy. The divine power in the 2 grains of divine source was absorbed into the wings. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Worried that the 2 celestial energy spheres would be affected, the wings stopped absorbing. Compared to before, the wings that had absorbed Suyu's divine energy had an additional layer of connection with Suyu. It was as if the wings had integrated into Suyu's body and become a part of him. Who is the Tai Qing Emperor? How much do you know about the yin-yang wings of Tai Chi? Luzhu stared at Suyu without blinking. Even though she was a woman, she couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. The yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole had actually been refined by Suyu. There was no doubt that this thing was left by the 9 emperors for the person who obtained the stone tablet. With extreme shock, Luzhu said, The Tai Qing Emperor was the last emperor of the ancient god realm. He was proficient in the supreme heavenly technique. He once used his own divine bones to forge the world's first flying imperial saint artifact, the yin-yang Tai Chi wings. This thing is ranked 19th on the list of ancient divine weapons. It is the strongest flying object in the ancient god realm. It can travel hundreds of millions of miles with a single thought. Hearing this, Suyu's heart thumped. An imperial saint artifact ranked 19th? It was 2 ranks higher than the 21st ranked Milky Way star sand. How could Suyu not be surprised to get such a heaven-defying imperial saint artifact? Thinking about it, the process just now should have been a simple owner recognition process. Suyu was able to control the yin-yang Tai Chi wings to a certain extent. It was a worthwhile trip to get this treasure. But more importantly, this stone tablet was forged by the 9 emperors at the expense of itself. The value of this thing was far greater than the yin-yang tai chi wings. The stone tablet slowly floated in the void, and a great thought penetrated the stone tablet, turning into 9 silk threads, extending towards Suyu. This was the great thought of the 9 emperors guiding the stone tablet to help Suyu refine it. Otherwise, who in the world could refine something forged by the 9 emperors? Suyu stared at it without blinking. He was always calm, but his breathing gradually became rapid. Luzhu forgot about herself and stared at the stone tablet. However, at this moment, a pitch-black giant claw suddenly slammed down from the void and pressed on the stone tablet. Boom! The stone tablet roared and trembled constantly, and a trace of the great thought resisted. However, under the giant claw, the stone tablet in the air was slowly pressed down. Suyu and Luzhu were taken aback. The stone tablet that suppressed the heavenly law was actually pressed down. Looking up at the giant claw, they found at this moment that above the stone door, there was a snake-like creature with a body of 10,000 feet long, covered with black scales. It exuded a terrible aura that could shock the gods. Just a glance at it made Suyu's heart beat wildly. This feeling was even more terrible than facing the demonic god of 6 paths. Suyu only had this feeling when he faced the giant of the bitter sea. What shocked Suyu even more was that the head of this snake-like behemoth turned out to be a dragon's head. In other words, this was a real dragon, and it was a deity-level dragon god. A long time ago, Suyu had seen a divine dragon. Even if it was a quasi-god divine dragon, a drop of divine dragon blood was purer than the mature gods of other creatures. According to the evil god, the divine dragon was superior to most creatures and was born to be proficient in the great law of heaven and earth. It could suppress the stone tablet precisely because of this. Moreover, the divine dragon in front of him was obviously not an ordinary divine dragon, but a supreme existence comparable to the giant of the bitter sea. At this moment, a pair of dark red eyes of the black dragon, in the darkness, quietly stared at Suyu. It felt as if the supreme master of a universe was calmly looking at an ant. As soon as he looked at him, Suyu was paralyzed, and his body was out of control. Suyu was anxious and bit the tip of his tongue. The stinging pain woke Suyu from the paralysis and forced him to control his body. Hurry up! The moment he regained control of his body, Suyu grabbed Luzhu and fled without thinking. As for the stone tablet, Suyu did not care at all. Swish! After a few breaths, Suyu flashed out of the vicinity of the stone door and flew out of the crack. The divine power of the 5 elements was operated to the extreme by him, turning it into the power of water. Suyu knew that even if the black dragon made a slight move, it would be fatal for them. The dark red eyes of the black dragon lying on the stone door turned slightly and locked on Suyu's figure from afar. A trace of indifferent killing intent was slowly revealed. Its huge nostrils gently puffed out a breath. That breath immediately turned into a little gray flame the size of a fingernail. Suyu, who was flying away, heard the divine 9-dragon cauldron in his mind and issued a rare urgent warning. Suyu looked back and his pupils shrank. Wasn't that the gray flame they saw before, the flame that melted a deep pit on the ground? Chapter 1306. Nothing was spared from the dragon's breath. The tomb guard eggs along the way were all turned into ashes. Any tribe leader would find it difficult to resist such a flame, let alone Suyu. Without hesitation, Suyu took out a large piece of golden wreckage, which was the fragment of the Golden Flame's forbidden wood boat that day. The wreckage rotated and condensed into a wall behind Suyu. Almost at this moment, the dragon's breath sprayed on the wall. Poof! After a stalemate of 2 breaths, the Golden Flame's forbidden wood, which was known for its sturdiness, was melted by the dragon's breath. It should be known that the water of the bitter sea that day could not do anything to the Golden Flame's forbidden wood. However, after 2 breaths, Suyu shouted, "Domain of life!" A mass of turquoise light, centered on Suyu, radiated 1,000 feet in all directions. The dragon's breath struck, turning Suyu and Luzhu into flying ashes in an instant. However, the moment they turned into flying ashes, they were restored by the domain of life. Hurry up! Suyu pulled Luju and fled frantically. The dragon's breath was hot in pursuit. In an instant, it caught up with Suyu and turned them into ashes. Under the domain of life, the two were restored again. The dragon's breath gradually weakened. The dark red blood eyes of the black divine dragon on the stone gate flashed with a trace of coldness. It raised its huge claws and slapped towards Suyu. Crack! There was a loud noise, and the jade dragon carved on the divine nine-dragon cauldron let out a soft roar. The domain of life that lingered around Suyu suddenly disappeared like a candle in the wind. It was impossible for the demonic god of six paths to destroy the domain of life, let alone make the dragon on the divine nine-dragon cauldron roar. Suyu had no time to be shocked, because the remaining dragon's breath was coming. Without the domain of life, they would definitely die if they were contaminated again. Alternate space. At this critical moment, Suyu once again used his trump card. The power of time, space, and soul, the three supreme powers of heaven and earth merged into one and rolled up the dragon's breath. The dragon's breath, which was about to hit Suyu and the others, seemed to be drawn into another space and time. Not only was it frozen, but it also disappeared. However, at this moment, the eyes of the black divine dragon suddenly flashed with killing intent, and the dragon's claws struck like a shadow. The alternate space was shattered in an instant. This was the first time an alternate dimension had been broken. The dragon claw tore through the space, its momentum unabated as it headed straight for Suyu. Suyu was horrified. If the domain of life could be shattered with a single slap, how could he resist the dreadful power of the dragon claw? Nine Emperor Shroud. Suyu bellowed as he took out the shroud. The shroud expanded and wrapped around the dragon claw. How powerful was the shroud that was stained with the blood of the nine divine warriors of heaven and earth in the galaxy? Anything that was enveloped by the nine emperors' remnant would be turned into a puddle of blood. However, this unparalleled blood-red robe was easily torn apart by the dragon claws. The pitch-black dragon claw seemed to contain the supreme Great Tao, breaking through all obstacles. At this moment, Suyu felt like he was being targeted by death. Bang! At this moment, the Nine Emperor tablet suddenly vibrated, and the heavenly book characters carved on it left the Nine Emperor tablet and were imprinted on the divine black dragon's claw. Chi. Immediately, the black divine dragon's giant claw emitted black smoke as if it had been fried in waste oil. Roar! The black divine dragon roared in pain and immediately retracted his dragon claws. His dark red eyes were filled with monstrous resentment and hatred. The nine emperors of the divine realm. You have trapped me and my master for hundreds of millions of years. I want you to die a horrible death. Roar! With another earth-shattering roar, the black divine dragon forcibly shook off the heavenly book characters. Taking advantage of the opportunity of the Nine Emperor tablet, Suyu immediately escaped. Insolent ant, don't even think about leaving. The black divine dragon opened his dragon mouth and roared. A rusty black fragment broke through the void and went straight to Suyu. Suyu did not look back, but he felt his whole body tremble, as if some supreme horror of heaven and earth had completely locked onto him. The yin and yang tai chi wings that were dormant in his body seemed to feel Suyu's boundless crisis and were activated on their own. Chi behind Suyu, a pair of black and white wings suddenly spread out. The black and white tai chi diagram was suspended above Suyu's head. At first glance, Suyu was like a god, wrapped in the yin and yang divine light, with the pattern of the tai chi diagram above his head. Whoosh! With a flap of the wings, Suyu suddenly felt that the yin and yang of heaven and earth were reversed. The next moment, Suyu appeared directly above the spirit vein outside the crack. Suyu was shocked. He had walked in the crack for a full 5 days before barely reaching the ancient tomb. In the end, he left the ancient tomb directly and returned to the outside world? Even a god could never have such a speed. Recalling the moment when the wings were flapped, Su Yu somewhat understood the true meaning of the yin and yang tai chi wings. Shuttling through yin and yang, one step into billions of spaces. How did you get out? At the edge of the deep pit, General Hu looked up at Su Yu in horror, showing a look of disbelief. He waited secretly at the edge of the deep pit according to the request of the Mermaid Emperor. The Mermaid Emperor said that if Su Yu was alive, he would definitely come back in 10 days. However, it was only the 5th day and he actually came out. The strangest thing was that General Hu did not notice how he came out. Su Yu glanced at him and had no time to pay attention to him. The feeling of being locked on by the Supreme Being of heaven and earth still showed no signs of disappearing. With a thought, Su Yu tried to control the yin and yang tai chi wings and launched another space transfer. The thought was conveyed, but the yin and yang tai chi wings began to absorb the power of Su Yu's celestial source origin again. It was not a little like the last time, but all the divine power in the celestial source origin. Su Yu was shocked. Without the nourishment of divine power, the celestial source origin would shrink. However, there was no time to think about it. The yin and yang tai chi wings were launched, and the yin and yang were in chaos again. The next moment, Su Yu appeared in an unknown wasteland. However, what made Su Yu's face sink was that after 2 consecutive jumps of billions of spaces, he still did not get rid of the Supreme Being's lock. A strong sense of crisis lingered in Su Yu's heart. This feeling was unprecedentedly strong. What had caught up with him? Su Yu's heart sank as he stared in the direction behind him. The evil god woke up and said in a low and solemn voice, "The Great Path Law. Su Yu, what taboo have you touched? How can you be locked by the Great Path Law?" Its tone was also unprecedentedly solemn, never so solemn. "A dragon, a black divine dragon," Su Yu said. Swish, Su Yu's eyebrows rotated, and a black dog as huge as a mountain appeared in front of Su Yu. The evil god rarely showed his real body, and this time it was one of them. His huge eyes stared in the direction of the ancient tomb, as if he was perceiving something. He murmured in confusion, "Black divine dragon, black divine dragon." Suddenly, the evil god's eyes widened, bursting with a horrified light. His huge body trembled uncontrollably, and his tone was full of fear. It's the world annihilation dragon. How could it be here?" Su Yu was secretly shocked. This was the first time he had seen the evil god feel fear. In his memory, the evil god was a deity of origin and seemed to have an extraordinary background. However, he was so afraid of that black divine dragon. Chapter 1307. However, he had no time to ask at this moment. The great Tao laws were locking him down even more tightly. He could sense that the thing was speeding towards him. At the same time, in the mermaid tribe, the Mermaid Emperor, who was deep in thought, suddenly had a drastic change in his expression. He suddenly stood up and looked in the direction of the ancient tomb, his eyes flashing with horror. Fragments of the Great Path Law? The World Annihilation Dragon had actually used this thing. Who did it want to kill? It's Su Yu. It's impossible. In front of the World Annihilation Dragon, Su Yu is like an ant. Either he doesn't care to kill him, or he can kill him 10,000 times with a single thought. General Blackfish and General Carp also hurried over to report that God's blood was raining down from the sky above the mermaid tribe. It was General Hu, he was dead. The two of them were shocked, speechless. General Hu was merely guarding the deep pit and waiting for his prey. How did he suddenly perish? The Mermaid Emperor's face was gloomy. The plan can only be brought forward. If the seal is broken, we will not be able to escape. Immediately send troops to the Yaksha and Frogman tribes. Yes. The two of them did not dare to ask any more questions. The death of General Hu made them feel exceptionally uneasy. At the same time, the strongest warriors of the Yaksha tribe and the Frogman tribe looked up at the spirit vein. That sudden eruption of great Tao laws deeply alarmed them. Since ancient times, Only the sovereigns of the heaven and earth were able to grasp the laws of the Grand Tao. Moreover, they could only grasp the slightest bit of it. Ever since the 9 emperors had fallen, the ancient god realm hadn't seen a law of the Great Tao for far too long. The appearance of this item caused a huge uproar. The news spread like wildfire among the 2 tribes, no, the 99 tribes of the southern domain. The law of the Great Path appeared in the world, and it was suspected that it was the work of the divine warrior of heaven and earth. While the powerhouses were paying close attention to the Great Path rules, Su Yu, who was the target of the attack, was facing an unprecedented crisis. Su Yu, once the law of the Great Path has been locked on, it will not change unless the target perishes from this world. The evil god was very serious. In particular, the World Annihilation Dragon is a divine dragon. He is naturally good at controlling the Great Path law. This trace of the Great Path law contains a trace of his great killing intent. As long as his great will is not extinguished, the Great Path law will not stop. Su Yu's gaze turned grave. The situation was much more serious than he had imagined. Su Yu grabbed the 5 elements mountain with one hand and placed it in front of his chest. At the same time, he took out the 5 elements divine prison. Since Su Yu had promised the black-green water dragon that he would let it go after resisting the demonic god of 6 paths for a while, the water dragon had not left Su Yu's side. Now that danger was imminent, Su Yu had no choice but to use it. But that was not enough. Shua, with a shake of the Buddhist beads on Su Yu's wrist, a veiled young lady, who had been sitting cross-legged, sat cross-legged on the ground. Sensing the changes in the outside world, the young lady slowly opened her eyes. A pair of beautiful amethyst pupils blossomed with dreamy colors. "Mr. Su, do you need me?" Bai Wanqing curtsied, without the slightest arrogance on her face. Su Yu said, "How much of the purple-eyed demonic god's divine path have you inherited?" 99%, Bai Wanqing said calmly. Generally speaking, it was very difficult to inherit the divine path to perfection. She was able to inherit 99% of the divine path, which was considered an anomaly. "All right, I need you to help me find something. Young Master Su, please." Bai Wanqing's eyes lit up and she smiled faintly. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. She wanted to show Su Yu that she wasn't any weaker than anyone else. "Great Tao laws." Bai Wanqing's face froze and her smile faded. Her purple eyes scanned the surroundings and suddenly focused in the direction of the ancient tomb. The pretty face under the veil was filled with shock. "It really is the Great Tao laws." Bai Wanqing's beautiful face changed. Such a supreme object of heaven and earth had actually appeared. As a divine path that spied on all the secrets of heaven and earth, she and her master were no strangers to the Great Tao laws that existed in the dark. Even their eyes could see the Great Tao chains that ordinary people couldn't see. However, this was the first time she had seen, no, it was the first time she had heard of the Great Tao laws being manipulated by others and carrying murderous intent. The target of the murderous intent was none other than Su Yu. "Can you see its essence and weaknesses?" Su Yu asked. Bai Wanqing's soul stirred, and her eyes showed fear. Prying into the Great Tao laws was a taboo for divine paths like them. Her master had warned her more than once that there were many taboos in the world that they could not pry into easily. Otherwise, they would be punished by the heavens. However, her master had fallen, and she no longer had any guidance in her life. If she really wanted to fulfill her master's unfulfilled wish and pass on the purple-eyed divine path forever, then she could only surpass her master. Therefore, she wanted to try the forbidden prying that her master had never tried in his life. "All right, I'll give it a try." Bai Wanqing took a deep breath, and her purple pupils became brighter and brighter. 2 rays of purple light gradually shot out, penetrating everything in the world and penetrating the Great Tao laws. With just a glance, Bai Wanqing's delicate body suddenly trembled, and blood flowed from her mouth. Her whole body, from the inside out, was constantly burning with an inexplicable flame, burning her. I see it, it's a metal fragment. Yes, it's a fragment of the great Tao chains. Bai Wanqing was in the raging fire, but her eyes were persistent. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat and he shouted, "Enough, stop! Not enough, I can continue to pry. Even the great Tao laws have natural weaknesses." Bai Wanqing was determined to surpass her master and fulfill his last wish. At this moment, Bai Wanqing was as graceful as a moth, leaping towards the beautiful flame. The purple light in his eyes suddenly became extremely bright, like two purple stars, illuminating this part of the world. In the world, all hidden secrets had nowhere to hide. I see it, that is the fragment of the chain that was forcibly broken by the world annihilation dragon. It is stained with its dragon blood. If the dragon blood can be dissolved, at this point, Bai Wanqing's voice stopped abruptly. She was still talking, but her voice seemed to be interfered with by the great Tao laws, and only she could hear it. At the same time, the burning flames on her body suddenly erupted, drowning her in a sea of fire. When the flames dissipated, only two remnant purple lights were left, and they gradually dimmed. The evil god sighed with emotion. The ancients said, "If you hear the way in the morning, you can die at night." She is also a sacrifice for the way, which is admirable and lamentable. Su Yu was silent, and with a wave of his hand, he held the two remaining pale purple lights in his palm. The phoenix can be reborn from the fire, and you can only be reborn after martyrdom, Su Yu whispered. Bring the dead back to life. A wonderful wave vibrated from Su Yu's palm. The two purple lights in his palm that were about to fade were bright again, bright and beautiful, and eventually turned into purple light and shadow. When the purple light dissipated, a moving and graceful body reappeared in front of Su Yu. Witnessing this scene, the evil god's pupils shrank to the extreme. The power of the great Tao laws? The evil god took a breath. The dead could not be resurrected, and yin and yang could not be reversed. If there was, it must be that the great Tao laws had been changed. He had followed Su Yu for a long time, but had never taken the initiative to explore Su Yu's secrets. However, what Su Yu showed today shocked him, and it was no less than knowing the existence of the world annihilation dragon. Although Bai Wanqing was resurrected, she fell into some kind of deep sleep, and wisps of light constantly emerged from her eyes. Su Yu smiled slightly. Congratulations, you have surpassed the purple-eyed demonic god, and your divine path has entered a new realm. The Buddha's light flickered, and Bai Wanqing was taken into it to rest quietly. The next time she appeared, she would be in a completely new state. Su Yu looked in the direction of the great Tao laws again, and whispered softly, "The shard of the ropeway is stained with the blood of the world annihilation dragon." A glimmer of hope burned in Su Yu's heart. If so, there was still a chance of survival. "Milky Way star sand!" Su Yu shouted, and the large star river light in his palm left his body and turned into a Milky Way that surrounded him. Stripping away the blood of the world annihilation dragon was the only way to survive. If the 5 elements mountain and the 5 elements divine prison could block the great Tao laws for a moment, the Milky Way star sand could be used. However, this was far from enough. Su Yu's mind moved, and a majestic figure appeared behind him. It had black hair and black eyes, looking down on the world. Then, another majestic figure stood behind him. It only had half of its body, and its whole body was colorful. It had a red head, a purple right hand, an emerald chest, a white right leg, and a pitch-black foot. However, it was not over. Behind it, there was another looming figure. It was a complete figure, full of the power of 5 elements. Green Bead was flabbergasted. 3 divine Taos? My God, how did you comprehend 3 divine paths alone? It was the first time she had heard of someone who could walk 3 divine paths at the same time. The second divine path, in particular, was the strangest. It only had the right half of its body, but every part exuded a strong sense of divine path, as if every part represented a divine path. After preparing these, Su Yu took out the demon god's cage. After opening it, several souls whose minds had been erased surged out. After doing this, the breath of the great Tao laws was already approaching. Su Yu slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, Su Yu felt that although the world was vast, there was no place that was not sealed. That small piece of chain fragment seemed to contain the supreme will to bind the world. No one could save him. Yun Yazi couldn't, the evil god couldn't, no one could. The only one who could save him was himself. The wind stopped. The clouds stopped. The rivers and great rivers also stopped flowing. The evil god and Luzhu also stopped. The whole world stopped. Time stood still at this moment. This was the great Tao laws, all-encompassing and containing all the mysteries of the world. Under the laws, the will of any creature was futile. However, Su Yu moved. A pair of deep, starry eyes that pierced through the Milky Way slowly opened. At the moment of opening, a fragment that was white and red, yellow and blue, black and purple, like many colors, crossed hundreds of millions of miles and shot towards Su Yu. Where it appeared, the world was still, as if it was the only one in the world. It was hard to say what it looked like. It looked like a fragment of a chain, but at a closer look, it looked like a world, and at a closer look, it looked like a galaxy. This indescribable and indescribable supreme object of heaven and earth shot towards Su Yu. Su Yu's eyes were purple, and the power of time was activated, allowing him to take a step in the still time and space. I also have the time law, Su Yu murmured, his fingertips pointing at the still 5 Elements mountain. The 5 Elements mountain rotated for a while, fixed on the ground in front of Su Yu's body. The fragment of the law turned a blind eye and shot forward. Poof, in front of the fragment, the 5 Elements mountain was nothing and was directly penetrated. Bang. Chapter 1308. The 5 Elements mountain was broken. The law fragments continued to attack. This time, they pierced through the 5 Elements divine prison. Bang. With another loud bang, the 5 Elements divine prison, an emperor-based saint artifact, was also broken. The fragment of the law was not obstructed in the slightest, and it headed straight for Su Yu. Su Yu took a deep breath, and with a thought, he summoned a group of souls in front of him. Pucci, without any suspense, these souls were also pierced through by the law fragments and reduced to dust. Su Yu's eyes turned serious, and the 3 majestic figures behind him took a step forward. The 5-colored transparent phantom image represented Su Yu's 5 Elements divine path. The black-haired and black-eyed figure represented Su Yu's inverse divine path. The colorful half-body figure represented Su Yu's comprehension of the divine 9-dragon cauldron. 3 figures stood in a straight line in front of Su Yu, shielding him. The power of laws easily penetrated the projection of the 5 Elements divine Tao, causing it to shatter into nothingness on the spot. Su Yu groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. The 5 Elements divine path he had comprehended had been destroyed. The law fragment did not slow down at all as it slammed into the black-haired, black-eyed figure. It wanted to pierce through as usual, but it was unexpectedly obstructed by a wave of defying will, causing it to actually stop for half a breath. Half a breath of time later, the law fragments pierced through it. Su Yu spat out another mouthful of blood essence, his face as pale as a sheet. The inverse divine way was also destroyed. Finally, the law fragment bombarded the colorful figure. At the moment of impact, the multicolored figure that only had half of its body left rapidly circulated with 5-colored light. Time power, space power, soul power, life power, and death power, the 5 supreme powers of heaven and earth, circulated at the same time. The fragment was forced to a standstill and could only slowly enter the body of the colorful figure. Su Yu's eyes flickered, and the vast star river in front of him flew over and enveloped the rule fragment. The powerful separation force stripped the world annihilation dragon blood from the fragment. A trace of captivating red blood slowly seeped out of the law fragment. The difficulty of stripping this thing was comparable to the blood of the giant of the bitter sea. The only difference was that Su Yu was running out of time. 10 breaths later, the law fragment successfully pierced through the rainbow-colored figure. The last of the divine Tao was destroyed. However, only a trace of the world annihilation dragon blood was extracted from the chain of law. Su Yu's eyes were filled with unwillingness, and his heart was in turmoil. Since when had he ever lowered his head? It's not over yet. Su Yu bellowed angrily, unwilling to accept his fate. So what if it's the Grand Tao laws? Su Yu's left eye glowed purple, his right eye glowed red, and both of his pupils glowed white. His left palm was emerald, and his right palm was pitch black. From the looks of it, it was extremely similar to the stalwart figure with half of its body. The only difference was that Su Yu had a complete body at the moment. Time and space are kings, life and death are emperors, and the soul is supreme. Su Yu shouted in a low voice. The 5 powers of the divine 9-dragon cauldron were all activated for the first time. All of a sudden, Su Yu's body was covered in 5 different colors. Indistinctly, one could see the virtual shadows of chains surrounding Su Yu's body. The evil god and green bead sucked in a cold breath. Law chains. The eyes of the evil god trembled. The chain of law was an astronomical phenomenon that could only be triggered by the divine kings of heaven and earth. It actually appeared on a junior who hadn't even reached the level of a deity. This was because Su Yu's 5 types of energy were the highest profound meanings in the world that were closest to the Great Path rules. It was not impossible for the 5 types of energy to appear at the same time and trigger the resonance of the Great Path rules. Law of time. Su Yu shouted, and the purple light suddenly became extremely bright. One of the chains of rules that surrounded Su Yu's body trembled and flew out in response to Su Yu's shout, colliding with the fragments of the chains that were attacking him. Ding! With a soft sound, the two collided. The fragment of the law of time summoned by Su Yu was easily shattered and turned into nothingness. This was all because the chain of law triggered by Su Yu was too weak. As for the chain fragment, although it was broken, it was complete. However, the fragment was also blocked for 2 breaths. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Milky Way star sand extracted a trace of the world annihilation dragon's blood. Law of space. Su Yu shook another chain of the law of the Great Path without hesitation and bombarded the incoming fragment. After successfully blocking for 2 breaths, a trace of the world annihilation dragon's blood was extracted. Law of soul. Law of life. Law of death. Every time Su Yu sacrificed one, he blocked the fragment of the law for 2 breaths and also extracted a trace of divine blood. From the beginning, the chain firmly locked on Su Yu, but now the chain was shaking, and the lock on Su Yu had loosened. After extracting 6 traces of the world annihilation dragon's blood, the world annihilation dragon in the ancient tomb also lost its precise control. However, the 5 laws had been exhausted. The chain fragment could no longer resist, and it penetrated Su Yu's body. At this moment, the world was silent. The evil god's dog eyes were filled with hot tears, and Luzhu also covered her face. He had failed after all. Although he finally triggered the law of the Great Path and resisted it with the power of the law. However, he still failed. The law of the Great Path penetrated his body and killed his star god. All the breath that existed in the world was erased. Evil god. Su Yu's mouth was full of blood, and his body was shaking. He did not even have the strength to look back. The moment the law of the Great Path passed through his body, Su Yu felt that he had lost everything. I hope you can pass a message to Yun Yazi for me. The evil god's eyes were full of grief and indignation. It seemed to see the old Xing River. The world annihilation dragon's mouth contained the law of the past, obliterating one Xing River overlord after another. It could only hide in a drop of divine blood and watch the people it knew perish one after another. Now, even Su Yu could not escape this fate. Go ahead. The evil god lifted its leg and wiped its eyes. Perhaps this was the last time in its life that it would see Su Yu. He was about to disappear from the world. Tell the old man that I failed to live up to his expectations. Su Yu sighed faintly. The evil god nodded its head and its tears rolled down. Take care. With a calm smile on his face, Su Yu slowly closed his eyes. This life was wonderful, but it was also filled with regrets. He still owed Xian'er and Xia Jingyu a future. Boom. With a soft sound, Su Yu turned into ashes. His breath, his everything was erased from the world. Except for the memories he left for others, there was no longer Su Yu in the world. Woof! The evil god raised its head, tears streaming down its old face, and let out a long and desolate bark. Time and space were silent, and only this lonely bark could be heard, sending Su Yu off. However, at this moment, where Su Yu turned into powder, from the ashes, flew out 5 palm-sized dragons, purple, red, white, green, and black. They entwined with each other, spitting out crystal light from their mouth. In the light, a quaint little cauldron was gradually revealed. The little cauldron was ancient, as if it came from a distant era. A mysterious breath surrounded the little cauldron, lingering for a long time. With the little cauldron as the center, the ashes of Su Yu were slowly collected into the little cauldron. The fragments of the Great Path rules seemed to sense it and rushed to the little cauldron. On the surface of the little cauldron, the 9 carved dragons were resurrected in an instant, flying and entangling the flying fragments of the Great Path rules, and dragging them into the little cauldron. The evil god, who was in sorrow, suddenly froze, staring at the little cauldron, and its eyes became smaller, and eventually turned into a needle. It even forgot Su Yu's death, forgot its sorrow, and stared at the little cauldron without blinking, murmuring, "The divine 9-dragon cauldron." This, buzz, 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 with a violent tremor, the divine 9-dragon cauldron spewed out a mass of milky white blood, along with Su Yu's ashes and a fragment of the chain of rules. The 3 sprayed into the air and merged into one. The milky white blood emitted a soft light, shaping a body. From the bones to the meridians, to the internal organs, to the skin, every inch was reshaped. The ashes were integrated into every corner of the body, leaving nothing behind. The fragment of the chain of rules was deeply embedded in the heart of the body. No, it replaced the heart. The chain of rules directly became the heart of the body. When the skin and facial features of this body gradually became clear, the evil god and Luzhu froze in place until they came to their senses and showed ecstasy. Su Yu. That was Su Yu. The divine 9-dragon cauldron absorbed the blood of the world-annihilating dragon in the chain of rules and used the dragon blood as the price to shape the body. Using Su Yu's ashes as the foundation, it integrated into the body. The chain of rules was replaced with Su Yu's heart. This was not a simple rebirth, but a new nirvana. A gust of wind blew, and Su Yu slowly opened his eyes, with a trace of confusion in his eyes. "I am still alive?" Su Yu murmured as he regained consciousness. Suddenly, Su Yu stared at the small cauldron in front of him, and his pupils gradually shrank. This is the divine 9-dragon cauldron. He had only ever seen it in his soul, and this was the first time he discovered that the divine 9-dragon cauldron had left his soul. Roar. Inside the divine cauldron, there were 9 faint dragon roars. Then, the divine cauldron rotated and disappeared into Su Yu's head. Su Yu looked inside and saw that the divine cauldron was entrenched in the center of his soul, just as it used to be. Did the divine cauldron save me? Su Yu immediately realized and was surprised and happy. The evil god wept with joy, and his huge body ran over, laughing with tears in his eyes. "Give me back my dog tears." Su Yu was stunned, and when he found the tear stains in the corner of his eyes, his heart warmed. He reached out and patted the dog paw that was coming over. "Yes, I owe you a few drops of dog tears." However, just as Su Yu was about to touch him, something strange happened. He saw that Su Yu's palm was suddenly covered with dark dragon scales, and his whole arm turned into a dragon claw. At the moment of contact, the evil god screamed and opened his mouth to spit out a mouthful of dog blood. His huge body was slapped away like a piece of paper. As the evil god flew backward, he screamed and cursed, "What the hell, what happened to you?" After smashing countless mountains, the evil god climbed out of the ruins, coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood, and stared at Su-yu angrily. As a result, the evil god was shocked and lost his voice. World Annihilation Dragon. He saw that Su-yu's body was quickly covered with black scales, and in a short time, his whole person had turned into a 3-feet-long black dragon. Although it was not as huge as the real World Annihilation Dragon, its appearance was extremely similar. Su-yu was also stunned and immediately turned his mind. The scales on the surface of his body quickly receded, and he returned to his human form. This is the dragon form technique? Su-yu was stunned. He had practiced the dragon form technique, and with the dragon tendons in his body as the foundation, he could transform into a golden dragon, but the power was average, only comparable to the fourth realm of the Dust Fairy. But now, he had transformed into the form of the World Annihilation Dragon and slapped the evil god half to death, which was unexpected. Chapter 1309. The first stage of the Evil Dragon Divine Body was the first dragon body. When this stage was cultivated to its peak, it would be the body of the 9 dragons. The second stage was the divine dragon body that the evil god mentioned. Most of the body was molded by the blood of the divine dragon. Moreover, the body molded by the divine 9-dragon cauldron was far safer than adding body parts of the divine dragon to the body. The molded body had no hidden dangers. Su-yu felt like he was dreaming when he reached the divine dragon body in such a short time. He clenched his fists, and an amazing power came from his flesh and blood. Even without the divine power, Su-yu could blow away ordinary gods with one palm. If he transformed into the World Annihilation Dragon, he could kill ordinary gods with his own hands without any pressure. Not only that, but his 5 senses were extremely sensitive. With a sweep of his mind, he could discover any movement in the hundreds of millions of mountains and rivers. Such a terrible perception could not be achieved by ordinary god. He did not expect to survive this disaster and advance to the divine dragon body. The evil god was so shocked that his jaw dropped. He gritted his teeth and said with envy and jealousy, "Damn it, in the ancient god realm back then, there weren't many people who could cultivate this evil dragon divine body to the divine dragon body stage. Even I didn't. You got lucky." Su-yu smiled and asked about what happened during the short period of death. Knowing that the fragment of the Great Path had also integrated into his heart, Su-yu was shocked. He immediately looked inside his body and was shocked. His undying heart disappeared and was replaced by a rusty chain fragment. The blood vessels in his body were passed through by the chain fragment. The evil god's eyes showed deep envy. "Your luck is so great that it can't be stopped. You are integrated with the rules. As long as the blood vessels are watered day and night, your blood will flow with the power of the rules. After the upper stage, any punch will carry the Great Path rules. Even at this stage, it will be of great help to the 5 supreme Great Path profound meanings that you have cultivated. If you don't believe me, you can try." Su-yu's heart moved. The power of time, the power of space, the power of soul, the power of life, and the power of death were displayed one by one. Su-yu was shocked to discover that he could trigger the appearance of the faintly discernible chains of the rule when he used any kind of energy alone. Like I said, these 5 kinds of profound meanings can cause the laws of heaven and earth to descend. It has an additional effect on the profound meanings you use. In this way, your 5 profound meanings won't be broken so easily. The evil god's eyes were red with jealousy. Indeed, although the 5 types of energy had yet to evolve into the power of law, they were far more powerful than before. It would not be so easy for them to escape Su-yu's power if they were to encounter the strongest people in the world again. Moreover, according to the evil god, the benefits had just begun. From now on, the fragment of the rule that was watering his heart day and night would integrate into Su Yu's limbs and bones, allowing Su Yu to destroy his enemies with the rule at any time. The harvest this time was unimaginable. Suddenly, Su Yu's heart shook. 3 majestic figures appeared behind him. Su Yu's eyes were filled with delight. The transparent phantom of the 5 elements divine Tao instantly solidified. This was a sign that the 5 elements divine Tao had reached the great accomplishment stage. The powerful figure with black hair and black eyes seemed extremely real, and he could even feel the breath of the powerful figure. This was a sign of the completion of the reverse divine Tao. Looking at the 5-colored body, the figure that originally had only half of the body had another half, but it was a little transparent. Oh my God! The divine Tao has also been condensed. The evil god's eyes widened. Every kind of divine Tao was tempered, and it often took a lifetime to perfect a kind of divine Tao. However, Su Yu easily completed 3 kinds, especially the reverse divine Tao, which had reached the perfect state. In theory, as long as Su Yu ignited the reverse divine Tao, he could ascend to the stage of deification and advance to the realm of early-stage quasi-gods. Su Yu laughed. Being destroyed by the chain of the rule really has an unimaginable tempering effect. He used 3 kinds of divine Tao to resist the fragment of the rule, but he never thought that there would be such a big gain. Now that the fragment of the rule was integrated into his body, wouldn't the solidification of the divine Tao improve by leaps and bounds? Staring at the reverse divine Tao, Su Yu did not intend to ignite it. If he became a deity now, it would be equivalent to giving up the 5 elements divine Tao and the more important 5-colored divine Tao. I wonder what it would be like to ignite several kinds of divine Tao at the same time. Su Yu's eyes were full of longing. This time, the harvest was great, but Su Yu also lost 2 things that made his heart ache. 5 elements mountain, 5 elements divine prison. The chain of the rule shattered them. In particular, the 5 elements mountain, which had helped Su Yu a lot, was gone just like that. Su Yu looked at the 5 elements mountain that had exploded into a piece of debris, and suddenly his eyes narrowed. He flashed over and grabbed something from the pile of debris. When he looked at it, it turned out to be a golden key. This is it in the 5 elements mountain? Su Yu was a little surprised. He had obtained the 5 elements mountain for a long time, but this was the first time he knew that there was a key hidden in the mountain. Judging from the breath, this key was exactly the same as the 5 elements mountain. Strange, why didn't Gang Daliai's mother tell me? Did she deliberately hide it from me? Su Yu's mind was racing, and he quietly put away the key. His eyes immediately turned and swept over the place where the 5 elements divine prison had been destroyed. It was also smashed by the fragments of the rule, leaving behind a ground of powder. With a stomp of his foot, a gust of wind blew away the debris of the 5 elements divine prison. Under the debris, a transparent amber the size of a fist was revealed. Inside the amber, one could clearly see that there were strange creatures with horrible breaths imprisoned one after another. The strong demonic energy they exuded was enough to prove their identity. They were from the demon clan, and they were extremely powerful demon gods. There were as many as hundreds of them, and they were half dead and half alive. They were forcibly sealed in the amber and could not move. Even so, Su Yu could feel the frightening ferocious breath from them. There were even a few breaths that were comparable to the breath of the giant of the bitter sea and the world annihilation dragon. What the hell was this? Su Yu was taken aback. Evil god, do you know this? Su Yu asked. The evil god shook his head, and his eyes were solemn. I have never seen it. At least, among the Star River overlords that I know, there is no such thing. However, the evil god stared at the amber and said, I can feel that this is the work of an emperor, used to seal some strong people in this thing. Seal? Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Recalling that this thing was hidden in the 5 elements divine prison, he had a guess in his heart. Suddenly, Su Yu and the evil god's eyes were fixed at the same time. They looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. They said in unison, "The demonic god of 6 paths." In the amber, they vaguely felt a trace of the power of the demonic god of 6 paths. How could it be? Su Yu's heart moved, and his eyes slowly narrowed as he carefully glanced at the amber. Suddenly, Su Yu's eyes fell on the corpse of a demon god that was about to dry up. If one looked closely, they would find that there was a dark green dragon tail in its mouth, and the tail was shaking from time to time. Soon, the tail slowly retracted, revealing the true body of the tail, a dark green dragon. Its mouth was full of milky white divine blood. It stuck out its tongue and licked it greedily, and a pair of sly eyes rolled around. Then, it crawled to the mouth of another demon god's corpse and secretly swallowed the divine blood and celestial energy sphere of the demon god. The power of the demonic god of 6 paths was emitted from it. This power was wrapped around its claws, so it could open the mouth of the demon god. Otherwise, with the weak soul state of the dark green dragon, it could not do anything to the demon god's corpse. At this moment, it was completely unaware that because of the destruction of the 5 elements' divine prison, its every move was clearly seen by the outside world. A cold smile appeared on Su Yu's mouth. Oh, no wonder it didn't say anything for so long. It turned out that it had stolen the power of the demonic god of 6 paths during the last attack to covet these demon god corpses. If the 5 elements' divine prison had not been destroyed by the great path rules, Su Yu would still be in the dark. From the first time I met it, this dragon had bad intentions. Now it even devoured the demon god corpses behind Su Yu's back. What an evil heart! Su Yu's smile became colder and colder. It's time to end this dragon. Su Yu held the amber in his hand and slowly closed his eyes. Suddenly, the amber shook violently, and the dragon that had drilled into the demon god's corpse was forcibly pulled out by a force. The dark green dragon was shocked and looked around, constantly muttering something, trying to control the amber and stabilize its body. The evil god was secretly surprised. This is fighting for control? The dark green dragon understood something and glared fiercely at the outside world. Its control became more and more stable, and it quickly stabilized. Su Yu's mouth showed a faint smile. Over the years, he had not slacked in his understanding of the demon clan word. He had unknowingly understood more than 700 words, almost half of them. As for the dark green dragon, it obviously did not have Su Yu's cheating power of understanding. With a move of his mind, a strong force suddenly pulled the dark green dragon out. The dark green dragon was shocked and hurriedly tried to control it. However, what made him angry was that compared with Su Yu, his control of the amber was insignificant. Swish! With a soft sound, the dark green dragon was completely squeezed out of the amber. "This is mine!" The dark green dragon roared, and his figure changed, becoming 30 feet long. He bit the amber, trying to take it back. Su Yu smiled lightly, and with a crooked finger, the amber obediently returned to Su Yu's palm. "You are wrong, this is mine." The dark green dragon roared, "Impossible, when did you control it better than me?" "A long time ago." Su Yu shrugged. The dark green dragon's face was gloomy. "Su Yu, you and I have no grievances, return the amber to me, and we will part ways from now on." Speaking of which, they did not have much conflict, if not for the first time he tried to plot against Su Yu. Su Yu said lightly, "First, the amber is mine, and I do not have the habit of giving my things to others at will. Secondly, if you wanted to part ways, you could have done so a long time ago after leaving the demon world. However, you secretly absorbed the god source and god blood of the demon god's corpse to strengthen yourself. This doesn't seem like you want to part ways." Chapter 13:10. On the one hand, Su Yu knew his secret, and on the other hand, Su Yu controlled the 5 elements mountain of the ice dragon. He wanted to take it back. In the end, his plan had been discovered by Su Yu. What made him even more furious was that Suyu had taken control of the amber from his hands without a sound or trace. This feeling of going for wool and coming home shorn made the black-green water dragon extremely angry. Suyu, I advise you not to court death. Today I am not the same as before. The black-green water dragon shouted coldly. Suyu said calmly, Oh? Is that so? Why don't you try? The black-green water dragon glanced at the evil god and was a little afraid. Then, it looked around vigilantly. After confirming that there were no ambushers, it revealed a fierce light and grinned hideously. That's fine. I plan to recover for a while and then settle the score with you. Since you want to die, then don't blame me. Roar. The black-green water dragon roared and slammed into Suyu with his 3-feet-long body. Unlike the previous soul body, the black-green water dragon had restored its divine body, and its strength had reached the realm of the gods. In his opinion, there was no doubt that he could kill Suyu, an ant. However, when he was about to hit Suyu, he saw a strange smile on Suyu's face. Dragon transformation technique. Roar. A real dragon roar resounded between heaven and earth. Suyu's whole body was suddenly covered with a layer of dark ink-like scales, and his body quickly turned into a 3-feet-long dragon body. As a water dragon, he had a strong sense of the real dragon. The black-green water dragon exclaimed on the spot, Real dragon! What shocked the black-green water dragon even more was that the breath of this weird black dragon made the black-green water dragon tremble involuntarily. What was going on? In a daze, a black dragon, a black-green dragon, a dragon, and a water dragon collided together. The black-green water dragon gritted his teeth and made a preemptive strike. A black-green dragon claw with a dim light tore at Suyu's neck. Suyu's eyes flashed with a faint smile, and he raised his dragon claw and slapped it in the air. Crack! The black-green water dragon's dragon claw was smashed by Suyu's claw, leaving a bloody broken arm. With a painful roar, the black-green water dragon's huge tail turned into a residual shadow, sweeping towards Suyu with amazing power. Suyu's eyes were calm as he swept his long black dragon tail. Puff, like tofu, the black-green flood dragon's tail was directly swept into minced meat. In just 2 moves, the black-green water dragon lost its claws and tail. The two weren't even on the same level. Sensing the crisis, the black-green flood dragon did not dare to underestimate it. He shouted, It's not over yet! True flood dragon fire. With a puff, the black-green water dragon spouted a mass of green flame from its mouth. The temperature was so high that even Suyu's dragon scales could feel the heat. Suyu's eyes were cold and his nostrils flared. World-annihilating dragon breath. A ball of gray flames suddenly flew out from his nose and headed straight for the other party. Poochie. Under the world-annihilation dragon's breath, the true fire of the flood dragon was immediately pushed back, and it also touched the body of the black-green flood dragon. With a shrill scream, the black-green flood dragon's entire body was burned by the gray flame. In an instant, its flesh and blood tumbled and turned into a layer of black charcoal. Although this dragon's breath did not have the power of the real-world annihilation dragon, it was not something that ordinary gods could easily bear. Suyu snorted coldly, stepped forward, and slammed his claws down, pressing the black-green water dragon to the ground. No matter how much it struggled, it couldn't break free. Spare me, please spare me. I dare not, never again. In the raging fire, the black-green water dragon begged bitterly. Suyu pondered for a moment. Open your mind. The black-green water dragon struggled for a long time, trying to play some tricks, but the gray flame on its body burned deeper and deeper. If it continued to burn, it would hurt its foundation, so it had to quickly let go of the defense of its mind. Suyu spat out a mouthful of dragon blood into its mind. Soon, Suyu felt his own dragon blood in the deepest part of the black-green water dragon's mind. As long as Suyu detonated the dragon blood would turn into the world annihilation dragon's breath and melt him from the inside out. In this way, Su Yu released his claws and retracted the dragon's breath. Having escaped from the brink of death, the black-green water dragon was paralyzed. Coupled with its severe injuries, it fell to the ground in a coma. Swish, Su Yu returned to his human form and shook his head. So weak. The evil god glared at him. You are so arrogant, aren't you? You don't even put the gods in your eyes. Not long ago, Su Yu was still being chased by several ordinary deities. Su Yu shrugged and put the black-green water dragon into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. He wanted to ask the black-green water dragon about the amber and the key. After solving this hidden danger, Su Yu said, "Let's go, the people of the mermaid tribe will come soon." The evil god was stunned. The mermaid tribe? Is there such a race in Xing River? After a pause, the evil god looked around, his eyes widened, and he said in surprise, "This is not Xing River, where is this?" Only then did the evil god realize that the place he was in was no longer the world of Xing River. Your reaction is really slow. Su Yu shook his head and said slowly, "This place is the ancient god realm." Hearing this, the evil god shook his head like a rattle. Ancient god realm? No, Xing River is the ancient god realm. What? Su Yu's eyes widened. The world of Xing River was the ancient god realm? Wait! The evil god was suddenly shocked. He looked around, and his eyes became more and more surprised. Is this the lost ancient god realm? Su Yu said, "Evil god, what is the connection between the ancient god realm and the lost ancient god realm?" The evil god was shocked. Xing River is the birthplace of the ancient god realm, where a high-level civilization of the god realm was born, and the 9 emperors who created the world were born. But in the distant ancient times, a black shadow crossed the Xing River god realm, and a woman who came out of nowhere rode a black dragon. She came to Xing River god realm and destroyed the Xing River civilization. The 9 emperors fell, and at the cost of their own lives, they suppressed this woman and the black dragon. That black dragon was the World Annihilation Dragon. But the civilization of the Xing River god realm has been destroyed and almost destroyed. The strong people of that era were almost all extinct. All the emperors of heaven and earth, the overlords of the Xing River, and the gods of the caves were all destroyed. To this day, the remaining Xing River god realm has not even produced a single overlord of the Xing River, which shows the decline of the Xing River god realm. The evil god continued, "If that was all, the galactic celestial realm might still have a chance to survive. After all, the 9 divine warriors of heaven and earth all had descendants, so there was still a chance for them to reproduce." However, not long after, another black shadow descended upon the galactic celestial realm. After it left, we found that more than half of the galactic celestial realm had disappeared. And the more than half that disappeared contains the last remaining civilization of the Xing River god realm. It is the last hope of the Xing River god realm. It is called the Lost God Realm. Looking around, the evil god's eyes lit up. If I'm not wrong, this is the Lost Land. Chapter 13:11. Su Yu did not expose his identity. He was secretly savoring the past that the evil god had revealed. No wonder the World Annihilation Dragon is here. Evil God said solemnly. His eyes were filled with lingering fear. Even after billions of years, he still felt fear from the bottom of his heart. However, recalling that the World Annihilation Dragon's great path fragment, which had killed countless Star River overlords, had become Su Yu's heart, the evil god felt extremely relieved. He couldn't help but laugh and say, "The World Annihilation Dragon probably never dreamed that his great path fragment would be obtained by a 9th-rate human like you. In this way, the threat of the World Annihilation Dragon is much smaller." The evil god said, "At the very least, it isn't an invincible existence in this lost god realm. If the 9 monarchs still have descendants, they should be able to contend against it." Su Yu shook his head solemnly. "I'm afraid things aren't as optimistic as you think." "Oh? What do you mean?" Evil God was slightly stunned. In this ancient god realm, not only does the world annihilation dragon exist, but also the woman who descended on the world annihilation dragon. Fear flashed across the god of evil's eyes. I know, but she was suppressed by the 9 emperors. The world annihilation dragon has also been suppressed, Su Yu said, staring at him. The world annihilation dragon was suppressed, but it could activate the chains of the Great Law to kill people from hundreds of millions of miles away. What about that woman? The evil god realized what Su Yu was saying, and his pupils gradually dilated. The fear on his face slowly rippled like ripples, and his voice trembled a little. You mean, the 9 emperors can no longer suppress it? Yes, she's about to come out of seclusion and return to the world, Su Yu said calmly. The evil god was petrified on the spot. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth moved with difficulty. How did you know? Su Yu said in a serious voice. I've been to her ancient tomb, and I've seen the 9 emperor tablet in front of it. There's a prophecy on it. After billions of years, the sinful woman will return to the world. Now, billions of years are approaching, and the seal will be destroyed in less than 20 years. When Su Yu said the word, sinful girl, the evil god knew that Su Yu was not lying. He had really seen the 9 emperor tablet. The evil god didn't speak for a long time and fell into a deep silence. After a long time, he said in a low voice, I didn't expect that after hiding for billions of years, I still couldn't hide from it. If the vile girl reappears, the world will definitely be destroyed. In the Star River God's realm, not even a single overlord-level figure had been born. He was left behind in the god territory and inherited the last civilization of the ancient god territory, but he was unable to give birth to an overlord of the galaxy. They didn't even have a galaxy overlord, let alone a divine warrior of heaven and earth. Unless the divine warriors of heaven and earth were reborn, no one would be a match for this evil woman. Su Yu had experienced many life-or-death crises, especially just now, when he had been through a complete and utter death. Thus, his mind was even more resolute than before. Evil God, man disposes, God proposes. How can our fates be decided by the will of the heavens? Su Yu's words were deafening, causing the pupils of the evil god to shrink gradually. Su Yu looked in the direction of the ancient tomb and said leisurely, because of the resistance and sacrifice of the ancient emperors, there are survivors of the god realm. If we even lose the will to resist, wouldn't we be letting down the sacrifices of the 9 emperors? The evil god's eyes gradually lit up, burning with a resplendent flame. He raised his head and sighed. That's right. After escaping for billions of years, why are you still escaping? With the reincarnation of the evil woman, no one would be able to escape. Where could they escape to? They were obsessed with escaping because of fear and deceiving themselves. You are someone who has been to the ancient tomb. I want to hear your opinion. The evil god took a deep breath and made up his mind to resist. Su Yu pondered for a long time, his eyes full of sharpness. Kill into the ancient tomb and kill the evil woman. Even though the evil god had a sense of resistance, he was shocked when he heard Su Yu's tone. How can you kill the evil woman that even the 9 emperors can't kill? The evil god's forehead was full of cold sweat, shocked by Su Yu's courage. Su Yu's eyes were deep and distant. Indeed, on the 9 emperors' tablet, the last words of the 9 emperors also told future generations that after billions of years, the ancient tomb would be broken, and they would escape. But I think that the 9 emperors have never considered that the evil woman who has been suppressed for billions of years could still destroy civilization as she did then? Su Yu said leisurely. The evil god listened and could not help but fall into deep thought. Any creature that had been suppressed for billions of years could not be unscathed. The erosion of time alone was something that all creatures could not resist. What's more, with billions of years of suppression, her physical body, soul, and divine power must be weakened. It could be said that now was the weakest moment of the evil woman's life. If he missed this opportunity, it would be really impossible to kill the evil woman again. Crisis is opportunity. The evil god was calm, and there was a hint of shame in his eyes. He was the overlord of Xing River hundreds of millions of years ago and had lived for countless years, but he was not as calm and steady as Su Yu. In 20 years, we have to gather all the forces, including the Xing River God Realm and the Lost God Realm. The evil god nodded slowly. Only by gathering the forces of all living beings can we fight. However, my Xing River God Realm is already in danger, let alone the unknown lost ancient God Realm. Su Yu frowned. So, I have to find a way to return to the Xing River God Realm and get rid of the demon world. Only then can I unite all the forces. How do you go back? Do you have a clue? Su Yu nodded. In the past, the descendants of the 4 emperors worked together to create a replica of the World Annihilation Plate. It once broke the barrier between the 2 worlds but was later lost. If I can find the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor and get the blueprint from them, there is hope to return to the Xing River God Realm. The evil god smacked his lips. The World Annihilation Plate is the treasure of the World Annihilation Emperor, right? That is the 5th-ranked Imperial Saint artifact. Su Yu said, exactly. However, there was a turbulence in the past, and the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor perished. His clan disappeared, and after thousands of years, no one knows where to find his descendant. Hearing this, the evil god laughed strangely. Hee, the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor, hee. Su Yu raised his eyebrows. Dead dog, tell me what you know. What time is it now? If it is the descendants of other emperors, I may not know, but the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor. Hee, when they see me, they have to call me Grandmaster. Su Yu blinked. Grandmaster Yu? The evil god raised his neck and said arrogantly, Boy, are you shocked? I used to be the spiritual pet of the World Annihilation Emperor, helping him guard the secret training room. Su Yu's eyes widened, and he stared at the evil god in disbelief. The evil god was even more proud of himself. It was rare to see such a look in Su Yu's eyes. He snorted and said, Are you shocked? Do you worship me? Ha ha. You really are a watchdog. Su Yu was shocked. The evil god's laughter stopped abruptly, and he stared at Su Yu. I am the spiritual pet of the World Annihilation Emperor, not a watchdog. Then what is your duty? To guard the door of the secret room. Omit the 2 words in the middle. Isn't it just a watchdog? Su Yu said. I used to hear you boast about killing the emperors of heaven and earth. It turns out that you are just a watchdog. I. The black dog's face turned red, and he stammered, unable to speak. Su Yu said, Tell me, can you find the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor? The black dog squinted at Su Yu and said reluctantly, Who am I? The evil god. I have the most acute sense of smell in the world. I have been with the World Annihilation Emperor for so many years. As long as his people have the breath of his blood, it is easy to sense their location. Hearing this, Su Yu was overjoyed. It was unexpected that the evil god had such a function. Then act immediately. Time waits for no man, Su Yu said. Deep in the ancient tomb, the World Annihilation Dragon, who was entrenched above the seal, suddenly opened his scarlet eyes and roared. The roar shook the earth, and the entire mountain range, which stretched for hundreds of millions of miles, shook. Countless flames hidden deep under the spiritual veins suddenly erupted. The spiritual mountains, which were rich with spiritual energy, were shattered in an instant. The rich spiritual energy that had been accumulated for countless years suddenly collapsed, forming a storm. With the spiritual veins as the center, it spread to the entire ancient god realm. From ordinary creatures to deities, all of them could feel the spiritual chi of heaven and earth becoming intensely concentrated. Also, the earthquake centered on the spiritual veins also swept through half of the ancient god realm. In the mermaid tribe, the mermaid emperor stared in the direction of the ancient tomb in shock and said, What happened? Why is the world annihilation dragon so angry? It was only so angry when it was suppressed by the 9 emperors. In the Empire of Darkness, a middle-aged man with long hair suddenly grabbed the void and murmured, "What a strong change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Someone, go to the southern region to investigate the changes in the world." "Yes, Your Majesty." In the ancient tomb, the world annihilation dragon roared, and the earth shook in the crack. The words of the heavenly book on the 9 emperor tablet came out one after another, suppressing the world annihilation dragon. However, not only could it not suppress it, but it also made the world annihilation dragon even more furious, and it struggled to leave the ancient tomb. At this moment, a clear and melodious voice came from the stone door. "Black, bear with it. Wait for me for 19 years, and I will help you retrieve the Great Path Fragment." Hearing this, the furious world annihilation dragon took a deep breath and gradually calmed down. After a long time, a faint voice came from the stone door again. "The person who took away your Great Path Fragment, we seem to know each other." The world annihilation dragon looked puzzled and lay back on the stone door. However, he was unwilling to give up. He removed the scale under his neck and brought out some dragon blood. The scale fell to the ground and turned into a cold and ruthless young man in black armor. The young man snorted coldly, turned into a shadow, and rushed out of the crack, heading straight in the direction of Suyu. The Yaksha tribe, led by the evil god, came to a barren grassland. Until they came to a tomb. The evil god looked nostalgic. "It was not easy to find one, but he is already dead." Suyu said, "Are there any other people living in this world?" The evil god nodded. "Yes, but for some reason they are very weak, so I can't identify the specific direction. I can only speculate." "Where?" "King's city of the Yaksha tribe." Suyu took out a sword from his palm and swept it across the air, exposing the corpse buried in the ground. Suyu examined the corpse and said, "He died a violent death, and the blood of the emperor has been drained." The blood of the emperor would not disappear so easily, but the corpse in front of him only had the breath of the blood left. The evil god thought deeply. The blood of the divine warrior of heaven and earth is extremely precious. If there is no strong protection, it is not impossible for the power of the blood to be extracted after being caught. He turned his head and stared at the king city of the Yaksha tribe, saying with mixed feelings, "Suyu, can you do me a favor?" Suyu didn't think about it and nodded. Yes. After all, he was the junior of an old acquaintance, and the evil god wanted to save him. Chapter 13:12. The evil god was filled with gratitude. "Thank you." Only Green Bead hesitated. "Young master, I'm afraid there will be great danger if we enter Yaksha King City. Perhaps you came from another region and don't know the situation of the 99 tribes in the southern region of the Empire of Darkness." From their conversation, Luju already knew that Suyu and the evil god came from a place called the Star River God Realm. In her opinion, it should be somewhere in the ancient God Realm. After all, the ancient God Realm was so huge. Every tribe is extremely xenophobic. For example, my mermaid tribe. Have you seen any other races? Suyu suddenly understood. Are you saying that it will be very troublesome for us to enter the Yaksha tribe with our identities? It's not just troublesome. If you mistakenly entered another tribe, they might punish you and let you go. But the people of the Yaksha tribe are fierce and aggressive. Once they find someone from another tribe, they rarely leave alive. Suyu frowned slightly. If he were to encounter an ordinary deity, Suyu would still be able to handle him with ease. However, if he were to encounter the Yaksha king, he would be a powerful being comparable to the Mermaid Emperor. With Suyu's current abilities, he was no match for him. "We can only disguise ourselves and deal with them carefully," Suyu said. Glancing at Luju, Suyu opened a Buddha bead and said, "If you are willing to follow me, you can train in this Buddha bead. If not, you can leave now." Green Bead smiled bitterly. Now that things have come to this, where else can I go? The mermaid tribe is no longer where I belong. Luju is willing to follow young master from now on. Actually, she still had one regret in her heart. She didn't know if Suyu was alive or dead, but she knew that asking Suyu to go back and save her sister was a very difficult task. Sighing inwardly, Green Bead entered the Buddhist bead and concentrated on seclusion. Suyu's eyes shone brightly, and the blood in his body started to boil. A wave of demonic energy gushed out of his body, and his facial features started to change into that of a demon. The evil god was stunned. Demonic energy? Are you saying that the beings of the Yaksha tribe are actually demons? That's right. Suyu said with certainty. The poison that the Yaksha king left in the mermaid emperor's body is the poison of the demonic god, which only exists in the demonic dimension. I can be sure that the so-called Yakshas left behind in the god realm are probably demons from the galaxy. The evil god was stunned for a moment and said, "Okay, if that's the case, I don't have to worry about you." With that, the evil god disappeared into the space between Suyu's eyebrows. A few days later, Yasha capital city. The entire city was filled with ferocious-looking races. Walking in the city, it was impressively a race that was similar to the devil realm. The difference was that the Yaksha tribe's devils were purer than most of the devils in the devil world. Almost none of them had been transformed. As Suyu walked among them, his face remained expressionless, and no one doubted him. Occasionally, some strong men would stop in their tracks as they passed by Suyu. What a pure imperial bloodline! Could this person be a descendant of the Yaksha king? Suyu listened to the exclamations of the strong and was secretly surprised. The breath of the demon race he showed was actually that of the sixth princess, which contained the breath of the royal family of the demon world. Could it be that the demon royal clan's aura from the two god domains shared the same aura? Vigilant, Suyu followed the senses of the evil god and searched for the descendants of the world annihilation emperor bit by bit. I can sense it more and more clearly. Evil god was a little emotional. After meeting an old friend, how could he not be happy? As he got closer to them, his senses became more accurate. After an hour, Suyu stopped in front of a luxurious house. The prince's mansion? Suyu glanced at the plaque and murmured. Of course, there was only one person who could claim to be the owner of the prince's mansion, the prince of the Yaksha king. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Through his soul eyes, Suyu penetrated the house and looked directly at the situation inside. As a result, Suyu found that there were many non-demon creatures in the prince's mansion. Each of them was pierced by a chain of demonic energy and imprisoned in the palace deep in the mansion. The palace was gloomy and emitted a gloomy, cold, and bloody smell. At a glance, cold corpses could be seen everywhere. Even those who were alive were full of pain and resentment. "What did you see?" Evil God asked. Suyu hesitated for a moment and told him the details. Hearing this, the evil god showed a trace of sadness in his eyes. The descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor have fallen to such a state? As they had guessed before, the people of the World Annihilation Emperor were imprisoned and the power of his bloodline was extracted. The extraction of blood not only caused the person who was extracted to be in extreme pain, but also lasted for a very long time. Most of the people who were extracted did not die because their blood was extracted, but because they were tortured to death. Their situation was so miserable that it really made one sigh with regret. The descendants of the emperor were reduced to the point of being tortured to death by a small tribe. Let's save them. Suyu did not say much. Through his transparent eye, he identified several weak points in the defense, turned over and entered, and quietly made his way outside the hall. When he was about to break the door to rescue them, his ears moved slightly, and he heard footsteps. He concealed his breath and hid on the roof. With Suyu's current divine dragon body, coupled with the rule heart, if he wanted to hide his breath, no one would be able to find him. How much blood has been extracted this month? A young man and a young woman came side by side. The man had a bald head, distorted and ugly features, short and fat. In contrast, the woman was delicate and refined, with a face like a peach blossom. Her belly was slightly bulging, a sign that she was pregnant. Suyu stared at the woman and was slightly surprised. The woman turned out to be a descendant of the World Annihilation Emperor. Looking at her belly, the fetus in her belly was half demon blood. Had she given herself to the demon race? Suyu despised her in his heart. Her people had suffered so much, but she was willing to give birth to a child for the enemy who destroyed her race? Prince, this is the blood extracted this month. Inside the house, a ferocious-looking demon walked out of the shadows and took out a small jade bottle as thick as a finger. There were 3 drops of transparent divine blood lying quietly in it. The ugly face of the prince squeezed out a look of dissatisfaction. Less and less every month, and this time there are only 3 drops. The ferocious-looking demon said, "It can't be helped. Their emperor blood has been extracted for decades, and it is almost exhausted. To be able to extract 3 drops this month is already the price of killing a few of them." Humph! The prince was displeased. He kicked open the door of the hall and entered with his hands behind his back. The woman behind him was expressionless and silently followed him in. As soon as he entered, the descendants of the emperor who were imprisoned in the house all panicked and begged. One of the strongest descendants of the emperor was about 20 years old, and the power of his bloodline was obviously higher than the rest. When he saw the prince, he immediately endured the severe pain all over his body and went forward to pay his respects. He knelt at the feet of the prince and showed a flattering expression. "Fengli greets the prince." The prince snorted and kicked him in the chin with the tip of his foot, sending him flying and crashing heavily to the ground. Not only was Fengli not angry, but he also smiled. He crawled over and said with a smile, "Good kick. As long as the prince's anger is appeased, anything is fine." The prince smiled and said to the woman beside him, "Xiang'er, I heard that among the remaining clansmen of the World Annihilation Emperor, he has the strongest bloodline inheritance. Haha, it's a pity that he didn't inherit his backbone. He's like a spineless coward. The World Annihilation Emperor has such a cowardly descendant. It's obvious that he's not that great after all." The woman smiled faintly and glanced at Fengli indifferently. Fengli smiled apologetically and said, "The prince is right. Our ancestor was only exaggerated by others. In fact, he's not that capable." His words immediately caused the crowd to curse angrily. "Fengli, it's fine if you don't want your dignity, but don't disgrace our ancestor. You're not worthy to be the heir of the World Annihilation Emperor." Hearing that, the prince frowned slightly and narrowed his eyes. He said calmly, "Fengli, I didn't kill you because I wanted you to persuade your compatriots to devote your strength to me. It seems that you haven't done your duty, have you?" Fengli's whole body trembled, and the flattering smile on his face disappeared instantly. A cold and cruel expression appeared on his face. Getting up, Fengli turned around and walked toward the 3 people who had spoken. He raised his hand and slapped each of them twice, his eyes fierce. "You damn dogs! You do whatever the prince says. How dare you resist?" Bang! He picked up an iron hammer that was stained with dried blood from the ground and hammered the 3 people's shoulder blades. The 3 people's shoulder blades were smashed into pieces. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and the 3 of them let out heart-wrenching cries of pain. Fengli grinned hideously and had no intention of stopping. His face was stained with blood, making him look even more ferocious than the demons. The prince was beaming with joy and was in a good mood. Haha, watching the descendants of the former World Annihilation Emperor pounce and bite people like dogs for my sake is a feeling that ordinary people can never enjoy. All right, I'll forgive you today. Persuade your people well and don't do this." Hearing that, Fengli dropped the iron hammer and put his hands on his waist. He bowed and smiled obsequiously. Rest assured, Prince, I will persuade them with all my heart and do my best for the prince. Ha, let's go. The prince was satisfied. He reached out and grabbed the jade bottle that contained the power of the bloodline and said to the woman beside him, Xiang'er, let's go. Okay. The woman nodded and followed the prince, leaving silently. From beginning to end, she did not look at her people. The hideous demonic god watched them go away and breathed a sigh of relief. We can take a break now. Extracting the bloodline is also physical work. Go find the poison demon and borrow a few women to play with. Swoosh. When the hideous demonic god left, Su Yu appeared silently in front of the palace. The scene just now was still vivid in Su Yu's mind, and his heart was filled with emotion. The dignified descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor had been tortured into a mad dog that bit its own people. Pushing the door open and entering, Fengli thought it was the prince who had returned. He immediately bowed and turned around. Ah, Prince, you are back again. Who are you? Fengli was shocked to find that the one who had appeared was a strange demonic god, and a handsome one with silver-white hair. Su Yu glanced at him indifferently, and his eyes swept over the other descendants of the emperor who were on the verge of death. He took out a flying sword and cut off the chains on their bodies. I was entrusted by someone to rescue you and leave. Su Yu raised his hand and took out an empty Buddha bead to open the entrance. However, no one took any action. This was because they had been rescued by the Yiksha tribe in the past, just like this. Without anyone to protect them, they would only become the exclusive property of one force after another. Who is it? Fengli swallowed hard and asked cautiously. Su Yu said indifferently, an old friend of the World Annihilation Emperor. They did not look convinced. Su Yu said, your bloodline power has been completely extracted. It is not worth it for me to risk entering the Yiksha King City to rescue you. When he finished speaking, Su Yu withdrew his demon appearance and revealed his human form. Only then did they look surprised. It was indeed risky to sneak into this place as outsiders. Chapter 13:13. After a moment of consideration, some of them dragged their tortured bodies into the space of the Buddha bead. Fengli rolled his eyes and blended into the crowd, entering the Buddha beads as well. Su Yu frowned but did not stop him. Seeing more and more people leaving, the rest sighed and entered as well. In the blink of an eye, the people of the World Annihilation Emperor were all rescued. Is this enough? Su Yu asked. The evil god's sigh came from between his eyebrows. Yes, find a place to put them down. That way, we will not let the World Annihilation Emperor down. Su Yu smiled. Oh, I thought you would take care of them from now on. Am I such a pedantic person? Besides, I am just the spiritual pet of the World Annihilation Emperor. I don't owe his descendants any favors. Saving them once is already me being considerate, the evil god said. If that's the case, then I can set my mind at ease. Before saving them, I was really worried that you would become so loyal that you would worship them like your grandparents. Su Yu chuckled. Since that's the case, then you should leave. 4 hours later, the hideous demonic god stood in the hall with a gloomy face, his eyes cold. Soon after, the prince and Xiang'er returned. The prince's ugly face was distorted with anger, looking extremely hideous. Damn it, who rescued them? The hideous demonic god glanced at Xiang'er with a gloomy look. He squinted and said, Prince, you should first ask who leaked the secret of them being here. The news that the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor were imprisoned by us never got out of the prince's mansion. Hearing this, the prince glared at Xiang'er fiercely and slapped her across the face. *tch, did you leak the news? After being slapped, Xiang'er's beautiful face immediately turned red, and a clear palm print appeared. Her eyes were calm, without sadness or anger. She said lightly, If I wanted to spread the news, I would have done it a long time ago. Why wait until now? Besides, I am with you every day. Do you think I have a chance to spread the news to outsiders? The prince snorted coldly. It's best if it's not you. If it's you, Humph. Xiang'er was silent, but a strange light flashed in the depths of her eyes. Pass the order, search the city. The prince was furious. The hideous demonic god said, since they could enter the prince's mansion, they must be able to retreat safely. Such a blind search is useless. Then what should we do? Without the blood offerings, our Yaksha tribe will definitely be destroyed. Unknowingly, the prince revealed a secret that no one knew about. The malevolent demonic god asked, Is the bloodline I gave to the prince still in your hands? Do you have a way to find them? Of course. The ferocious fiend celestial revealed a mocking smile. The power of the bloodline is their pride, but it is also a chain that they can't get rid of. As long as I have a trace of bloodline power, I can sense them from afar and chase after them effortlessly. The prince's eyes lit up. Good. I, the prince, will lead a group of cultivators to follow you. I want to see who is so bold as to kidnap the descendant of the World Annihilation Emperor, on a wasteland outside the Yaksha kingdom. With a flick of his wrist, Su Yu released all the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor. They were at a loss for a while. When they saw the scenery of the outside world that they hadn't seen for a long time, their faces lit up with joy. However, when they noticed the silver-haired human standing in front of them with his hands clasped behind his back, the joy on their faces disappeared, replaced by fear, anxiety, and uneasiness. They knew that the next person who would extract their bloodline might be the human before them. You are free. However, Su Yu's calm smile was the only response they got. They couldn't help but be stunned. They looked at each other to make sure they hadn't heard him wrong. Perhaps it was because they hadn't been free for so long that the word freedom was nothing more than an extravagant hope for them. Everyone was silent for a long time. Then, an old man with a hunched back and ragged clothes said in a trembling voice, Sir, you don't want our bloodline? Su Yu said calmly, I told you, I was asked to save you. Finally, everyone accepted the reality. Some were trembling with excitement, some were in tears, and some were wild with joy. Su Yu secretly sympathized with them. When the royal sacred faction of the World Annihilation Emperor fell, these people were the most pitiful. Su Yu couldn't help but wonder what would happen to his people if he were to die one day. Xian would be taken away. Whether it was her appearance or the body of the Phoenix of Death, she would be regarded as the exclusive property of others. The Jiuzhou cavern world would become the resources of the strong again and be refined into the godly energy sphere. Their fate might not be much better than the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor. Su Yu's heart tightened and his shoulders felt slightly heavy. Excuse me, who asked us to do this? Can you tell us? We really want to see our benefactor. The old man wiped away his tears and asked in a choked voice. Su Yu hesitated a little and asked the evil god in his mind, Do you want to see him? After a long time, a vortex appeared between Su Yu's eyebrows, and a black dog that had returned to its normal size appeared in front of everyone. Looking at the dog, most of the people were confused. Only the old man, with his eyes wide open, showed an expression of joy, and knelt down tremblingly. It's the evil god. It's the first spiritual pet of the ancestors, Lord Evil God. What? Evil God? The Star River Overlord who slaughtered heaven and earth? It's the spiritual pet of the ancestors. It's him who came to save us. Swish. Swish. The descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor all knelt down to pay their respects as if they had seen a relative from a lifetime ago. The black dog looked solemn and raised his paw to help them up. He sighed and said, Billions of years have passed, and I have died once. I am no longer the spiritual pet of the World Annihilation Emperor. You don't have to pay your respects. In fact, long before the arrival of the sinful woman, he had been released by the World Annihilation Emperor and returned his freedom. He had nothing to do with the World Annihilation Emperor, and he had saved them today in passing. Thank you, Lord Evil God, for saving us from disaster." A young man walked out, looking respectful. The black dog frowned. This young man was Feng Li, and what he had done was really annoying. But after all, he was a descendant of the World Annihilation Emperor, and the black dog did not care about it. He nodded lightly. Feng Li bowed and said with a smile, "The return of Lord Evil God is an opportunity for the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor to rise again. We are willing to follow Lord Evil God to rebuild the World Annihilation Imperial Sacred Faction and restore the glory of the World Annihilation Emperor." Hearing this, the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor all showed a look of anticipation. Yes, if the evil god was willing to shelter them, would they still have to worry about being captured and having their blood extracted? Su Yu secretly despised him. It was Feng Li who cursed his ancestor, the World Annihilation Emperor, for not living up to his name. Now he was shamelessly clamoring to restore the glory of the World Annihilation Emperor. Moreover, what annoyed Su Yu even more was that Feng Li was not satisfied after being saved, and he even asked the black dog to shelter them. The black dog was silent and did not respond. After all, he was the spiritual pet of the former World Annihilation Emperor. Logically speaking, he had the responsibility to restore the glory of the World Annihilation Emperor. But Su Yu had no such scruples. He said lightly, "Saving you is a favor, and not saving you is a duty. No one will say anything about him. He is just the spiritual pet of the World Annihilation Emperor, not the spiritual pet of the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor. Don't make excessive demands." Many of the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor retracted their gazes resentfully, their faces full of shame. The evil god had rescued them from the abyss of suffering for the sake of their ancestors, and he had no obligation to continue sheltering them. Feng Li narrowed his eyes and stared at Su Yu, saying in an unfriendly tone, "Who are you? You are nothing but a slave of the evil god. We, the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor, are talking to the spiritual pet of the World Annihilation Emperor, and you have no right to interrupt." In fact, based on the relationship between Su Yu and the black dog was more like a slave who relied on Su Yu to live. Looking at him with indifference, Su Yu said, "So what if I am a slave? What I said is reasonable. If you have the slightest sense of shame, you will not continue to make things difficult for the evil god." "So you really are a slave?" Feng Li's habitually bowed waist suddenly straightened up, and his gaze at Su Yu was no longer filled with awe and reverence. "Since you are the slave of the evil god, you are also our slave." Feng Li raised his chin and said arrogantly, "Evil god, you were born as the spiritual pet of the World Annihilation Emperor. Now that you are still alive, you should continue to fulfill your duties and become our spiritual pet. Now I order you to conquer a tribe for us at once, so that we, the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor, can settle down." Feng Li's attitude was arrogant, and he completely regarded himself as the World Annihilation Emperor. The black dog looked at him with indifference and sighed softly. The World Annihilation Emperor was great all his life, but the descendants are getting worse with each generation. The black dog turned around, too lazy to pay attention to them, and said, "Su Yu, let's go. Everything ends here." "How dare you?" Feng Li bellowed coldly, his voice imposing. "You evil creature, you have received great kindness from my ancestor, and yet you are so ungrateful, abandoning us?" The black dog turned its head and stared at him coldly. "Ungrateful? Fine, I'll take it that I am ungrateful. You guys are on your own." When he finished, the black dog stepped into the void, his eyes full of disappointment. "You want to leave? You disobedient dog." Feng Li sneered, and a strange power surged in his body, condensing into a vague, majestic shadow behind him. That shadow was none other than the World Annihilation Emperor. The black dog, who was walking in the void, suddenly shuddered and turned around abruptly. "What are you doing?" Feng Li sneered. Of course I'm letting a dog like you know who the master is. World Annihilation Blood Seal. Feng Li bellowed, and the eyes of the majestic shadow behind him emitted bright light. The black dog shuddered violently, and a rune mark automatically appeared in its body. It was extremely ancient, with traces of the Emperor's great will remaining. This was the bloodline mark left behind by the World Annihilation Emperor when he took in the black dog. It contained the Emperor's great will. Back then, many overlords of the world had fallen, but the black dog was the only one who could leave behind a drop of blood. This was because of the existence of this great will. Now, Feng Li had activated all the marks in the black dog's body through the bloodline of the Emperor. The activation of the mark meant that the black dog was once again firmly under control. Moreover, the controller was none other than Feng Li, who had activated it. Back then, the World Annihilation Emperor had set the black dog free but did not remove the mark. Perhaps he had been prepared for a day like this to come. If he was not around, his descendants could still control a Star River overlord. Unfortunately, the arrival of the sinful woman had ruined all his plans, and the strength of the evil god was far from what it used to be. The mark activated, condensing into a rune between the black dog's brows. A feeling of life and death being controlled surged into the black dog's heart. Seeing this, most of the other clansmen fell silent. Although they had let down the evil god, this was the only way to ensure that they would not be caught again. Only a few were indignant, especially the old man who had spoken first. He said angrily, "Evil creature, what are you doing? The evil god came to save us because of old ties. How can you repay kindness with ingratitude? Indeed, if the evil god did not have the intention to save them and did not show himself, so what if they had the Emperor's bloodline?" Slap! Feng Li snorted coldly and slapped across the air, sending the old clansman flying. He shouted coldly, "Ignorant thing! I am doing this for the sake of everyone." As he said this, Feng Li stared at the evil god and sneered. With a shift of his mind, he controlled the mark. Suddenly, the rune flashed violently, and the power of the rune exploded from within the black dog's body, tearing its skin and flesh apart. Streaks of black lightning wandered within the black dog's body, causing him to howl in pain. One could imagine the pain that could make a former Star River overlord howl in pain. Chapter 13-14. The evil god gritted his teeth and did not say a word. Feng Li's face was cold and stern as he activated the mark again, causing the evil god great pain. The more the evil god was in pain, the more excited and agitated he became. It was as if he had finally found an outlet for the torture he had suffered over the years. Only when the evil god was on the verge of death did he stop. Ha ha ha! The World Annihilation Imperial Sacred Faction, let me rebuild it. When he glanced at Suyu, he looked down at him condescendingly and said in a commanding tone, "You heal it immediately." Suyu smiled and remained indifferent. "Damn slave! How dare you disobey me?" Feng Li shouted and glared at the evil god. "Look at the door and tell your slave to listen to my orders from now on." The evil god lay on the ground, his body a bloody mess. Only his eyes were intact, and he revealed a self-mocking look. "I'm afraid I can't command him." "Isn't he your slave?" Feng Li asked in surprise. The evil god chuckled. "I'm more like his slave. Without him, I would have died a long time ago." Feng Li frowned. "I'm not afraid of that. You subdue him now and set up a seal. I think his strength is not bad. Maybe he can be of some use." Upon hearing that, the evil god laughed again, and his laughter was extremely sarcastic. "Not to mention that I was seriously injured by you. Even if I wasn't, I would still be far from being his opponent." Feng Li was a little regretful. "He's that powerful? What a pity. Haha, he's not just powerful, he's very powerful. The number of deities that have died in his hands is uncountable." "What?" Feng Li was shocked, and his eyes widened. "You mean he, a fourth realm mortal fairy, has killed many deities?" The evil god said, "Haha, Isn't the bloodline of the world annihilation imperial sacred faction able to see through the aura of heaven and earth? Why don't you take a look and see how many deities' auras have been left on his body? Fengli was a little incredulous and thought to himself, how many deities can a fourth realm mortal fairy kill? Killing a seriously injured deity on the verge of death is already a great stroke of luck. However, he still gave it a try. The eyes of the majestic phantom behind him suddenly lit up, and two brilliant rays of light shot straight at Su Yu. Under the light, many dark red bloodlines that were invisible to the naked eye appeared on Su Yu's body. Some were long, some were short, and they coiled around each other densely. With just one look, Fengli's scalp went numb, and he retreated in shock. Dozens of gods died in your hands? A long line of blood meant that they had died directly at Su Yu's hands, while a short line meant that they had died indirectly at his hands. Although there weren't many long lines, there were at least a few. As for the short term, there were simply too many books to count. Hee, my master, how stupid are you to think of imprisoning me in front of such a person? The evil god revealed a pitiful look. Didn't you notice that he wanted to kill you a long time ago, but he couldn't because of me? Hearing this, Fengli trembled violently, his eyes filled with fear. Whoosh, with a light leap, Fengli came to the side of the evil god and hid behind him. He threatened, "Don't come over, or I'll kill him immediately." Su Yu crossed his arms and looked at him coldly. "Kill him if you like. He should pay the price for his stupidity." Fengli looked at the dark red blood eyes on Su Yu's body, and his eyelids trembled uncontrollably. His heart was filled with regret. He had imprisoned his spiritual pet in front of a big shot who could kill a god at will. Just the thought of it made Fengli's intestines turn green with regret. Beads of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. At this moment, he was in a difficult position. Su Yu put down his arms and walked towards Fengli. The indifference on his face gradually turned murderous. "Do you know why I want to kill you? It's not that you're cruel to your own people, but like a dog to outsiders. It's not that you're ungrateful, turning from arrogant to respectful. It's that you've touched my people." Yes, the black dog was already his people. After years of getting along, they had long since become friends instead of enemies. The black dog lying on the ground grinned with a gratified smile. Looking at Su Yu, who was gradually approaching, Fengli trembled all over. His eyes kept avoiding eye contact, and his heart was on the verge of collapse. Right at this moment, several tyrannical breaths caught up with them. The one in the lead was the extremely ugly prince, followed by the ferocious demonic god and Xiang'er. Seeing that, Fengli was overjoyed. Abandoning his people, he flew over, bowed, and said excitedly, "Prince, I want to make a report. This person forced me to escape, and that black dog is also an accomplice." Su Yu said disdainfully, "What a good obedient dog." The prince cast a sidelong glance at Su Yu and frowned slightly. "You actually have the royal bloodline of my Yiksha tribe. Interesting. Tell me, who sent you?" Hearing that, Fengli was startled and hurriedly said, "Prince, I still want to make a report. He's not actually a demon, but a human in disguise." "Human?" The prince and the ferocious demonic god were both taken aback. The prince nodded slightly. "Fengli, you've done well. I'll exempt you from punishment this time. As for your people, humph, how dare they escape? Blood Corpse Yiksha, when you bring them back, I'll leave them to you." The Blood Corpse Yiksha laughed hideously. "Prince, don't worry, I'll make them wish they were dead. I've been too gentle with them in the past." The faces of the people turned pale. Recalling the torture they had suffered, they trembled all over, and the timid and weak ones collapsed to the ground. The prince stared at Su Yu coldly, the corners of his mouth curving into a cruel smile. "Human, are you ready?" Fengli hid behind the Blood Corpse Yiksha and sneered. "Prince, if you catch him, please let me torture him." Fengli, who had regained his protection, was no longer panicked, and his ferocious expression returned. Calling him a dog couldn't be more apt. The prince nodded slowly and yelled, "Blood Corpse Yiksha, catch him!" The corners of the Blood Corpse Yiksha's mouth curled up into a cold smile. "Boy, if you fall into my hands, your fate will be very miserable." Before he could finish, Suyu suddenly turned into a black dragon, leaving an afterimage in the air. The Blood Corpse Yiksha only had time to growl, and then immediately stood motionless, like a wooden statue. Its eyes were wide open, but there was no light in them, and they gradually dimmed. Behind it, a 3 feet-long black dragon was entrenched, and in the dragon's claws was a bloody godly spirit. There were 2 fist-sized holes in the abdomen of the Blood Corpse Yiksha, almost piercing through it. Plop! The Blood Corpse Yiksha's body went limp, and it fell from the clouds to the ground with a dull thud. Its vitality had been extinguished. The whole place was dead silent. The Blood Corpse, one of the 4 deities of the Yiksha tribe, had died in a single blow? After a long time, the sound of rapid breathing could be heard in the air. The prince's ugly face looked even uglier because of his bulging eyes. His mouth was open, and he was breathing rapidly. At this moment, he no longer had the slightest bit of arrogance. The sinister smile on Fengli's face froze, as if it had been frozen. The descendants of the emperors were also extremely shocked, and they did not dare to move. "This is to nourish your body." Suyu tossed the godly spirit to the evil god. The evil god opened his mouth to catch it and said vaguely, "Thank you very much." Only then did they finally come to their senses, and all of them were horrified. The prince screamed and yelled, "Protect me! Protect me!" With a casual grab, he threw Fengli, who was hiding behind him, in front of him. Fengli was so horrified that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. At this moment, Suyu was more terrifying than anything else in his eyes. "Don't come over, or else I'll kill the evil god right now." Fengli threatened as if he was grasping at the last straw of hope. Suyu's expression was indifferent, and he did not give chase. Seeing that Suyu had stopped, Fengli was reassured, and a fierce look appeared on his face again. "If you don't want the evil god to die, get away from me. Or else." All of a sudden, Fengli screamed at the sky, and a blood-stained blade pierced through his chest from behind. Fengli looked back, and a comely, indifferent face came into view. Feeling his life slipping away, Fengli roared, "You bitch, how dare you, how dare you!" Poof! Xiang'er twisted her wrist, and the blade minced his heart. With unwillingness and madness, Fengli said ferociously, "If I die, no one will have an easy time." As he spoke, he was about to activate the imprint to kill the evil god. Xiang'er stared at him indifferently. "Do you have to do evil even when you're dead?" With a soft sigh, Xiang'er slammed her palm between his brows, shattering his soul in an instant and cutting off his consciousness in time. With a ferocious look on his face, Fengli fell to the ground unwillingly and became a pile of meat paste. By the time the prince came to his senses, Fengli was already dead. Now, Fengli was his only life-saving talisman. "Bitch, I knew you were up to no good by offering yourself to me." The prince roared, and his palms slammed into her chest like dragons. But before he could react, his soul was burned away by the dragon's breath. Then, Suyu appeared in a flash and dug out his godly spirit. "Prince!" The strong men who followed him roared. They wanted to chase after him, but they were afraid. Suyu's eyes were cold, and the dragon's breath swept in all directions, turning them into ashes on the spot. In the blink of an eye, the pursuers of the Yiksha tribe were completely annihilated. Suyu held the godly spirit in his hand and stared at Xiang'er. He stared at the descendant of the emperor who had offered herself to the enemy and was pregnant with his child. Xiang'er combed her hair and said indifferently, "You must look down on me, don't you?" "Yes," Suyu said. "At first I was. Now that I think about it, in the wilderness you buried the remains of the emperor's people, didn't you?" Xiang'er raised her jade-like face. Her delicate and indifferent face flashed with a hint of surprise, relief, and a touch of being understood. Gently nodding, Xiang'er said, I have to leave one of my people alive to avenge the dead. Touching the fetus in her arms, Xiang'er said, "He has the blood of the Yiksha and the World Annihilation Emperor. What is born will not be a hybrid creature, but a world-destroying poison. The Yiksha king saw the purity of the Emperor's blood that I inherited, so he kept me alive and married me to the prince. Little did he know, the blood of the World Annihilation Emperor can only be withstood by the blood of the same tribe. Once combined with the blood of the Yiksha, it will only produce world-destroying poison. Once it erupts, the entire Yiksha tribe will be destroyed." Chapter 13-15. How many creatures would have perished? This woman looked delicate and pretty, but her heart was extraordinarily ruthless. "Now that your people are safe, you can consider aborting the fetus," Su Yu said. However, Xiang'er shook her head gently. Although tears of sorrow were flowing down her face, there was no expression on her face. She said coldly, "No. I want to give birth to the fetus. I want to destroy the Yiksha tribe and all those who have hurt me and Fengxian." Fengxian? Su Yu remembered the lonely grave in the wilderness. Was that the grave of his lover? "There is still hope if you are alive." Xiang'er shook her head, her eyes dim and listless. "Living is sometimes torture. Benefactor, you don't have to persuade me, I have made up my mind. When I gave myself to the Yiksha prince, I had already made up my mind. I must brew the world annihilation poison to avenge Fengxian and my people." Xiang'er's eyes were shining with determination and madness. Su Yu looked at her deeply and did not try to persuade her again. Turning around, Su Yu flew down and searched Fengli's body, but found nothing. Then, his gaze swept across the rest of the people of the Emperor faction. After being scanned by him, everyone kept quiet out of fear, especially the group of people who supported the imprisonment of the evil god. They were terrified. "Let me ask you something. Millions of years ago, your imperial sacred faction joined forces with other sacred factions to explore the endless abyss and created a powerful treasure. Do you know anything about it?" This was the main purpose of Su Yu's rescue. In the face of Su Yu's question, they shook their heads blankly. They had no idea. Su Yu sighed. Everything was within his expectations. This group of people had been separated by many generations since millions of years ago. In a situation where they were declining day by day, it was almost impossible for them to have information from millions of years ago. "Are you talking about the World Annihilation Plate replica?" However, at this moment Xiang'er asked. Su Yu was shocked. "You have information about the World Annihilation Plate replica?" However, Xiang'er shook her head. "It was too long ago. How could ordinary people like me have it?" Just as Su Yu looked disappointed, Xiang'er continued, "However, the Empire of Darkness has replaced the World Annihilation Empire, and many resources have been obtained by the Empire of Darkness. The information about the replica of the World Annihilation Plate is most likely in the hands of the Empire of Darkness royal family. The Empire of Darkness was one of the 4 empires that controlled the ancient god realm. Behind the dynasty was the descendant of the Eternal Night Monarch, the Eternal Night Sacred Sect. According to Su Yu's speculation, the faction master of the sacred faction was very likely to be as powerful as the demonic god of 6 paths. It would be extremely difficult for Su Yu to obtain the replica of the World Annihilation Plate. Sensing Su Yu's predicament, Xiang'er raised her hand and summoned a jade bottle from the prince's space storage. Inside the bottle were 3 drops of transparent divine blood. The bloodline of the World Annihilation Emperor is highly sought after in the black market. Every drop of it is a priceless treasure. Xiang'er said with a complicated expression, "With this, you will definitely be able to find someone in power who is willing to help you in the dynasty's black market." The bloodline of the Royal Annihilation? Su Yu reached out and took it. He was curious. What was the use of the divine blood of the divine warriors of heaven and earth? Staring at Fengli's shattered flesh and blood on the ground, Su Yu waved his sleeves and collected all of it. Xiang'er looked impressed. Fengli is the one with the most bloodline among the remaining descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor. You can extract the power of his bloodline and use it for other purposes. After saying that, Xiang'er bowed. Take care, benefactor. She turned into a beautiful shadow and disappeared between heaven and earth. Su Yu sighed secretly. He didn't know if she would still be alive after releasing the World Annihilation poison. Putting away the precious Emperor's teachings, Su Yu looked at the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor and said calmly, "Take care of yourselves." After saying that, he put away the evil god and headed straight for the capital of the Empire of Darkness. In the palace of the Yiksha Kingdom, the Yiksha king looked up at the divine blood floating in the sky with a gloomy face. His eyes were fierce. Who dared to kill the blood corpse Yiksha? At that moment, Xiang'er covered her bleeding arm. Her face was pale as she stumbled over. "King, we were ambushed. The blood corpse Yiksha has fallen." The Yiksha king was taken aback. "Where is the prince? He's always been with you." Xiang'er's face was full of grief. She cried, "King, I've let him down. The prince chose to stay behind for the sake of the unborn child in our womb. He asked me to escape first. He was killed by the enemy." The Yiksha king was stunned, as if he had been struck by a bolt from the blue. After a long while, he came to his senses. Who is the enemy? Why did they ambush you?" It was an old friend of the World Annihilation Emperor. He came to rescue the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor. When the prince found out, he led the blood corpse Yiksha and a group of strong men to hunt him down. Unexpectedly, the enemy set up an ambush. Hearing that, the Yiksha king's face fell. "What did you say? The descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor were rescued? Why didn't you say so earlier?" The Yiksha king immediately rushed to the prince's mansion. Looking at the empty main hall, his face was as gloomy as water. "What does that person look like? Where is he?" The Yiksha king's eyes were grave. His face was even uglier than when his son had died. It was as if the sky had collapsed. Xiang'er waved her hand and copied Su Yu's face in the air. She said, "They went to the imperial city of the Empire of Darkness." "The imperial city? Great." The Yiksha king looked nervous. He immediately issued a series of orders about the distribution of power in the tribe in his absence. The Yiksha king took one last look at Xiang'er's abdomen and looked comforted. "Xiang'er, stay in the tribe and recuperate. I'm going to the imperial city." 3 months later, after a long and arduous journey, Su Yu and the others finally arrived at the imperial city. Unlike the tribes, there were all kinds of people in the imperial city. For convenience, Su Yu summoned Luzhu. She was more familiar with the environment here than Su Yu. "Sir, the most famous intelligence agency in the imperial city is the Hall of One Man's Word. As long as you have money, you can get any information you want," Luzhu said. "The premise is that you have a lot of money. In fact, Su Yu didn't have the coins of the ancient god realm." "Take me there," Su Yu said. Luzhu thought about it and said, "Sir, the Hall of One Man's Word only recognizes money and not people. Without enough gold coins from the ancient god realm, I'm afraid you'll be humiliated for no reason." "Haha, don't worry, they'll pay me back." "Huh?" Green Bead was flabbergasted. Since ancient times, only the Hall of One Man's Word had demanded money from others. This was the first time she had heard of someone giving money to others. The Hall of One Man's Word was located in the southern part of the imperial city. It was located in a remote area, but it was bustling with activity. Su Yu and the others waited patiently for 3 days before it was finally their turn to enter. Rather than calling it the Hall of One Man's Word, it would be more accurate to call it the Palace of One Man's Word. The Hall of One Man's Word was divided into 9 subhalls. Each subhall had 10 rooms. Su Yu and the others had entered one of the rooms. Inside the room, there was an old man who was half black and half transparent. He was sitting cross-legged on a stone bed, his expression dull and impatient. According to the degree of secrecy, the information will be divided into 3 levels: sun, moon, and star. Star is the lowest, and it will cost at least 10,000 God territory gold coins each time. Verify the gold coins first, then start asking questions. The old man announced the rules mechanically, sizing them up. With the old man's experience, he could easily tell that the 3 of them did not have an illustrious background. Green Bead was slightly surprised and exclaimed softly, 10 years ago, wasn't it only 3,000 gold coins? When did the price increase? The translucent old man said lightly, it increased just now. Do you have any objections? Green Bead was secretly indignant. She had seen the arrogance of the people in the Hall of One Man's Word. Back then, even the Mermaid Emperor was despised. However, the power behind the Hall of One Man's Word was so great that the Mermaid Emperor could only bear with it. She was a little worried that Su Yu would not be able to control his temper. We don't have gold coins, Su Yu said calmly. The translucent old man's expression tightened. Why are you here if you don't have money? The Hall of One Man's Word is not a place for beggars. His words were extremely rude. Su Yu was still not angry. He silently took out a jade bottle that contained a drop of transparent divine blood and said, "But I have this." The translucent old man sneered. "I said, as long as I have money, don't give beggars things to me." His voice stopped abruptly, because after Su Yu opened the jade bottle, a breath that contained the majestic will of an emperor suddenly floated over. His eyes widened as he stared unblinkingly at the small jade bottle in Su Yu's palm. He said in surprise, This is... Su Yu closed the bottle cap as if nothing had happened and said lightly, "It's nothing. It's just a beggar's thing. I'm sure you won't be interested in it. Let's go." The translucent old man recovered from his shock, his face turning green and red. Seeing that Su Yu was about to leave, he hurriedly said, "Wait. If you give this to me, the price of information will be reduced by half." Su Yu sneered. "Do you really think I'm a country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world? Do you think you can swindle away the divine blood of the World Annihilation Emperor like this?" His voice was not loud, but it was not soft either. The 4 words, World Annihilation Emperor, were undoubtedly a mythical legend in the ancient god realm. As soon as it appeared, it immediately pricked people's nerve. Did he just say the divine blood of the World Annihilation Emperor? It seems so, let me ask. The translucent old man was startled and immediately sealed the stone door, turning away the people who came to inquire. His arrogant face squeezed out an amiable expression, and he said with a smile, "You two, let's talk things over. Everything can be discussed." He stared unblinkingly at the jade bottle in Su Yu's palm, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. This was the divine blood of the World Annihilation Emperor, which was extremely rare. "I would like to buy this drop of divine blood. I wonder what price the 2 of you would like to offer?" the old man asked kindly. Su Yu gave him a sidelong glance and said lightly, "Can you afford it? Don't even think about it, it's not something people like you can afford." The translucent old man's face turned green. Only he had the right to say such things to others. Few people had the right to say such things to him. Luju secretly vented her anger. "Who asked you to be so arrogant? Now it's all over. I'm looking for you to give you a chance to make money. If only you know where this drop of the World Annihilation Emperor's blood is sold, how much do you think this information is worth?" Su Yu put away the jade bottle, sat down casually, and asked. The translucent old man's eyes turned, and he immediately understood the meaning behind it. Not to mention 10,000 God Realm gold coins, even millions of God Realm gold coins could be easily earned back. Although it was still a pity that he could not swindle this drop of divine blood from Su Yu's hands, he would be a fool not to make money. "All right, what information do you want to ask for? I will provide you with star-level information for free." Unexpectedly, Su Yu shook his head coldly. "Free? Is there such a good thing in the world? Give me 500,000 God Realm gold coins, and I will decide whether or not to ask for information from you. Otherwise, I would rather go to other intelligence agents. Anyway, the intelligence agents of the other 89 rooms would welcome me to cooperate with them.